This is our regular City Council meeting of September 9th, 2019. May I have a roll call?
Councilmember Mullen?
Here.
Councilmember Peak?
Here.
Councilmember Pearson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Farrer?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Lloyd Ahern, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Right hand to your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lloyd. May I have an approval of the agenda, please?
I move to approve the agenda.
We have a second?
You have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. May I have a report on the posting of the agenda?
The agenda for this meeting was properly posted on August 29th, 2019, with the amended agenda posted on September 5th, 2019.
Thank you, Heather. We now have a ceremonial proclamation. We have a proclamation declaring September 16th through 20th, 2019 as Septic Smart Week. I would like to invite Aaron Miserless? No, excuse me.
Wrong one.
I've got the wrong script.
Matt Simpkins.
Matt Simpkins to accept the proclamation. Okay. Is this on? It is. Whereas over 90% of Malibu citizens dispose of wastewater from their homes and businesses through the use of septic systems, also known as on-site wastewater treatment systems, and whereas the city's Environmental Sustainability Department oversees programs for the safety, protection, and sustainable use of built and natural environments, and whereas failing or malfunctioning septic systems can pollute beaches and waterways with raw sewage and create public health hazards, and whereas Malibu's on-site wastewater professionals have used their expertise in the design, installation, maintenance, and regulation of on-site wastewater treatment and dispersal systems, and whereas the city will participate in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Septic Smart program and continue to provide education about the need for proper septic system use and routine maintenance. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Malibu declares September 16th, 2019 through September 20th, 2019 as Septic Smart Week in the City of Malibu, and encourages its citizens to consider projects to improve sustainability at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided by local, state, and federal agencies in protecting public health and our environment. And Matt, I'd like to present you with this proclamation.
Great, thank you.
Would you like to say something?
Yes, please.
Please do.
Good evening, council members. My name is Matt. I work for the Environmental Health Department. I just want to say I'm excited to be here to receive this proclamation. Thank you. Hopefully it'll help raise awareness to homeowners about their septic systems. If anyone has any questions or would like to learn more about their systems, they're welcome to come visit us Tuesdays and Thursdays between 8 and 12, or set up an appointment. And also there's more information on our website at malibucity.org. Thank you. Cool. Yeah, let's go over there. Cool.
Perfect. You want to come over here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Next item is 1B. Could I please have a staff update on disaster response and recovery?
Good evening, City Council. Tonight, we just have a few slides to show you with an update of what's going on in terms of the rebuilding process. So at this time, the Planning Department has issued approvals for 51 like-for-like rebuilds, 68 for like-for-like plus 10%, and then 12 approvals for major changes to residences. And then currently under planning review, 18 applications are pending, and that gives us a total of 132 that have been approved. In terms of fee waivers, we also wanted to give you an update on where things are with fee waivers. These are the fees that council agreed to waive for like-for-like and like-for-like plus 10% projects only. And these are all the city fees. They don't include any other agency fees. So as of today, the total amount of fees that have been waived amounts to $486,474.
In the building department, we have 16 permits issued to date, and we had another one today, and I'm not sure if these numbers have been updated to reflect that. And that is another thing to celebrate. We've got approximately 44 projects in the plan check process, and I want to remind anybody, if you have difficulties in plan check, it is a complicated process because you're working with multiple city departments and agencies. Please do reach out to staff. We're here to help get you through it as quickly and easily as possible.
Thank you, Bonnie and Andrew.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So last time I gave you a more lengthy update on what we've done to prepare, and now I'm just going to give you kind of a shorter one of what's happened since the last council meeting. So since last council meeting, we started our 4th CERT class. We have about 30 people in that class, a really good group. We conducted 4 Emergency Operations Center training classes for staff last week, and we have more scheduled for this week. We participated in an LA County Sheriff's Department Emergency Operations Bureau briefing, which was very informative. We launched the Home Ignition Zone Assessments Program with our Fire Safety Liaison, and actually since June, he has done 27 home ignition zone assessments in the city, so that's really great progress. I also met with the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District to start planning a joint disaster exercise. We conducted a test of the disaster notification system for Eastern Malibu. The draft of the Malibu Survival Guide has been completed and right now proofreading it. The emergency preparedness card that we'll be mailing out is ready to be mailed by the end of this week. And coming up, next week we'll continue our notification system test. Next week will be Eastern Central Malibu, the following week Western Central, and then the western end of Malibu the week after that. This week on Wednesday, we have Preparing for Fire, Malibu residents share their experiences. That'll be Wednesday at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. Should be a great evening with Malibu residents sharing with other Malibu residents. So we think it'll be a good learning opportunity. And then Thursday, the 19th, we have a Fire Safe Council workshop. A Fire Safe Council is a neighborhood organization to organize your neighborhood for preparing for fire. It also enables you to apply for grants to also prepare your neighborhood. So we have a workshop to talk about how neighborhoods could do that. Then on Saturday, September 21st, we're going to have a red flag season community fire briefing. We'll have fire officials and other individuals here to give everyone the latest information on how the fire season is looking. And again, we like to remind everyone that after hours emergency information is always available. We have a one call to City Hall, 310-456-2489, extension 311. This is available when we're during emergency situations. We keep it staffed 24 hours a day. And then we always like to remind everyone to sign up for disaster notifications and alerts at malibucity.org/alerts or malibucity.org disaster notifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Moving on to item 2A, written and oral communications from the public. Thank you. I would like to ask if we could start with our acting assistant fire chief, Michael Brown.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and the members of the council and members here in the audience today. Good evening. As I said, my name is Mike Brown. I'm the acting assistant chief, sitting in the position for Chief Williams, who's gone on long-term injury. It serves me a great honor to fill in this position, getting a chance to work in the Malibu area. I have 29 years of fire service. I've actually been on quite a few incidents. Major historical incidents over the past 29 years, I would say. 4 of them right here in this area, between 2 Topanga fires, Worsley, and a few others. Got some public education background and public information as a public information officer background, so I bring that to my experience in working in this position. Along with my work and hopefully continued work that Chief Williams is doing, I just want to continue working with Jerry Vandermeulen and just continuing the work that's needed to assure the people here in Malibu their safety. And also we're going to be working with a new community service liaison, Megan Courier. She was unable to be here this evening. She was attending another event, but she's going to be scheduling hopefully a meeting with all of you shortly, very soon as well. If all possible, I'd like to just really briefly just give a couple things to think about. The fire department has, of the 4 stations along Malibu, have conducted well over 4,000 inspections, and I can say that we have completed those inspections 100%. We've done the initial inspections, and we're going to go out and continue doing the follow-up of inspections. Some other things to think about. This is a perfect time to use my public education background, just to kind of brief some of the public members here that, some things that they can do, such as cleaning out rain gutters and inspecting your rooftop for dead leaves and vegetation that may be receptive to embers. Also think about cutting trees back if you can, pruning your trees back a little further back than you would normally, because of course we witnessed firsthand that even though some of the homes had defensible space, that did still cause for some homes to be endangered. Want to inspect your vents for the vulnerability in those areas where embers and ember casts may blow into them. So if you have the time to inspect your home, walk around your home and just make sure your home's is safe. If feasible, consider purchasing dual pane windows and get away from the single pane windows, because that was a problem too with the single pane windows. The heat that the windows took cracked those windows. Fire went into the residence. Reposition your patio furnishing, moving them away from the home. This potentially could catch fire and expose a home to potential fire. Lastly, coordinate your fire safety drills with your family members. It's very important that you take the time out now, while the weather is not so hot and so windy. Just practice those things that are going to be important, and that's keeping your family safe. All this information I speak of is on our website at www.fire.lacounty.gov. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, our first public speaker is Bruce Silverstein. And next, after that, we have Elizabeth Stevens. And after that, Barry Haldeman. If you would all please come closer to the front to be ready. Thank you.
Good evening, members of City Council. Thank you for the time to speak. 3 weeks ago, SCE and the city staff both represented to this city council's planning commission that there was a dire emergency that threatened life and property, necessitating granting SCE retroactive authorization to pave over the Bell property and use it as a giant parking lot and as an industrial work yard through the end of the year. Within the next few days, SCE abruptly vacated the giant parking lot it had created in the center of Malibu, claiming that the decision to do so was prompted by the owner of the property increasing the rent. How SCE solved the dire emergency that threatened life and property is beyond me. Plainly, there was no such emergency. SCE and the city staff misrepresented that fact. Indeed, a week before the Planning Commission meeting at which SCE and city staff lied to the Planning Commission about the emergency and other matters, Mayor Wagner publicly stated at a meeting of this body that a representative of SCE had said that SCE didn't need the Bell property, but that it was a cost-saving measure. Well, that was borne out by the economic decision that SCE made after it got the permits that it requested and vacated the property, putting the city in a weakened position to deal with SCE for remediation purposes. The issue of SCE is just the tip of an iceberg that is much larger and is epidemic and endemic within the city, and which will be addressed by a number of citizens in connection with item 6A this evening. That problem is a disregard and lack of care for the city's vision statement and mission statement by the city staff and the city manager. To my amazement, this attitude is shared by some members of city council. I was speaking the other day to a member of city council, and I will not say who it was, and they told me that the vision statement and mission statement are just aspirational. They're not part of the law of Malibu, as are other provisions. Well, that's not so. They're the first section of the zoning provisions. They are the law of Malibu, and if the city's attorney has not explained that to city council, the city attorney is remiss. And if the city's attorney has told the city council otherwise, the city's attorney is wrong. The mission statement and vision statement should be guiding all decisions that the city council makes with respect to matters upon which it touches. And that is unapparent. If that is being given consideration in the city council's decisions based on recommendations of city staff, it's not apparent. It's not apparent to me, and it's not apparent to a number of residents of the city. So I encourage the city council to take note of the vision statement and mission statement, read them, imprint them. They're part of the law of the city, and they should be regarded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silverstein. Next, we have Elizabeth Stevens, and then Barry Haldeman, followed by Lloyd Ahern.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Stevens, and good evening, council members. And I actually wanted to come here to thank Rick for his comments regarding MRCA. As many of you know, MRCA has impacted our neighborhood severely. I happen to be personally sued along with 9 other individuals, and I'm at over 18 million and counting, $15,000 a day. So our neighborhood has dealt with MRCA on 3 different occasions as far as what we've been dealing with, along with staff on one particular property and some others. We've had to deal with offers to dedicate, we've had to deal with the purchase, and what was unfortunate is some of the information we learned during this, the few years, is that the staff seemed to know more than we did at the time, and that was problematic and concerning for us. So these comments were welcomed in the sense because Reva did say she would look into if there was anything going on as far as the incentive program still being, maybe not being on the books, but maybe it's being addressed or implied as some benefits. So I'd like that to be looked at, please. The other thing is I'd like to bring your attention to SB 45. SB 45 is going to be a bill that's actually working its way through right now. And it's, in my personal opinion, I've read quite a bit of it, it's poorly drafted. The MRCA stands, as many other agencies, it's over $4 billion. It's another one for safe drinking, which we already have propositions and bills that we've had for bonds. It's wild prevention, it's a feel-good bill, and it's over $4 billion. That's something our children are going to look at paying for. And the MRCA stands to gain $24 million plus. And and you just need to look at who's supporting and who benefits. $24 million plus. 5% of that goes to more access, more public access. So I'd greatly appreciate if you could seriously look into this bill, and you can weigh in on it, but I think it needs your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Next, Barry Haldeman, followed by Lloyd Ahern, followed by Lance Simmons.
Good evening. You know, all this talk about the disaster plan and safety is a real segue into what I'm going to talk about. As many citizens don't know, the Santa Monica Mountains are in LA County and are subject to the LA County's local coastal plan. Sheila Kuehl is about to introduce an amendment to the local coastal plan on September 24th, in about 2 weeks, to allow camping in ESHA areas. The amendment is sponsored by Coastal and, we believe, the MRCA. They've tried this before, and residents of Ramirez sued Coastal and Los Angeles to prevent this plan from going forward, and they won. The court held that the Coastal's argument that the so-called low-impact camping does not significantly impact ESHA areas is incorrect as a matter of law. Yet they're trying it again with different wording on the amendment. And there have been negotiations that have gone on about the amendment, but it's clear that they will not give up. Malibu is on record in its May 22nd letter to the Supervisor Kuehl as being against this amendment. And since that time, we've had the Woolsey Fire, which has destroyed people's homes and will have impact on their and Malibu's life for years to come, and also on the other side of the hill as well. LA County was overwhelmed by Woolsey, and were unable to really respond to it, as we all know. So they're spending time and resources to figure out how to deal with it in the future, yet Supervisor Kuehl is pushing this amendment now to allow more overnight camping and increase the fire danger. We have plenty of safe, supervised places to camp, so why add this additional problem? So what I'm looking for is the city to write another letter to Supervisor Kuehl, for citizens to write this week to Supervisor Kuehl, indicating how ludicrous and dangerous this amendment is, and also be ready to show up on September 24th in case we have to make a show of force to show how unhappy we are. I just want to read one thing from the judge's decision. He said that chaparral is all over the Santa Monica Mountains and is one of the most volatile fuel types in the world. And quote, the Santa Monica Mountains and surrounding communities are considered to be amongst the most fire-prone landscapes in North America. The entire Santa Monica Mountains coastal zone is a, quote, very high fire hazard severity zone. Please oppose this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. Next, Lloyd Ahern, followed by Lance Simmons.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lloyd Ahern, and I want to talk about what Barry just talked about. This is a very politically and environmentally tone-deaf endeavor. Sheila Kuehl has been around since the 90s, and she should know better than trying to force all of this camping in the ESHA area when the whole environmental community has always said that the ESHA is the holy grail of the environment. Now, all of a sudden, in order to get us to not even understand what they're doing, they are calling it H1 and H2. The only time they refer to it as one time as ESHA was when they said, and this is a killer, completely the opposite of everything they'd ever told us in every meeting we've ever had with them. In order for the people to understand ESHA, they have to camp in it. So that's like the general that said, you know, we had to destroy the village to save it. It's insane. dialogue that they're trying to pull off on us. And I don't understand how Sheila can do this, because she sat, and now Jefferson's not here, but he was there. He was there at those meetings. Rick was there. I'm sure you guys were at those things at Pepperdine and at King Gillette Ranch. She saw with her own eyes. So I think there's something going on. Regional planning is pushing this thing through to her staff. And I'm not so sure she really wants this, or I can't quite figure out. She was smarter than this. So I think if all of us, including Trevor, if we can have somebody from the legal department from Christie's firm, and Susan, as the emergency person, on the 24th, we have a massive show of force. We're down there, and we just say, this is stupid, guys, and prove it to us. And this person from regional planning, our staff should get with them, this guy, and figure out what he's doing, because it doesn't make any sense, the things that I've read. And we should just say, because our life is being consumed by these people who never give up, and we have got to get control of this. They're controlling us. We should change that, and we should control them. So we need a lot of people, and a show of force downtown is a really good first start. Thanks.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next is Lance Simmons.
Good evening, Commissioners. The reason I am here on this podium tonight is to express absolute unconditional support for the declaration of a climate emergency by this body. 26 years ago, I was appointed by the Clinton administration.
Do you want to speak on that item?
Yeah, I can't speak about that here?
No.
Oh,
It
okay.
is agendized.
Then I'll wait.
It's just
Sorry,
for items not
Lance.
on the agenda.
Thank you for your patience.
We just want you to hang out a lot longer, that's all. Okay.
Okay, those are all the speaker slips I have for public comments of items not on the agenda.
Anything?
Next item is our city manager update. Riva?
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to start by sharing some good news. As Andrew Sheldon mentioned in his update, we did issue an additional building permit today. Number 17 goes to Guy Blake, standing in the back. And Guy is one of our volunteers on patrol, and he and his son were both on duty throughout the entire fire incident, usually sleeping here at City Hall on the floor, even though their house had burnt down. And for that, I'm terribly grateful and really happy to see that you're rebuilding. I texted him and asked him why he wasn't at Home Depot, but he's here instead. So thank you, Guy, for always being here. A couple upcoming events that I wanted to share. I think Susan went over a few of them, so I apologize if I'm repeating. Tomorrow night, we have a fire escaping workshop here at City Hall in the multi-purpose room from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And on Saturday, September 14th, we have a points of distribution and information stations demonstration. This is to show how we're going to be communicating with the community if, God forbid, there's another incident where we lose cell communications. And that'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. here at City Hall in the upper parking lot. And then on Saturday, September 21st, we have a turf replacement workshop here at City Hall from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Wanted to make sure the community knows that the Nautica Triathlon will be taking place this weekend. We will have a robust traffic enforcement plan underway, but I certainly urge anybody with concerns or issues to contact City Hall. As was shared during Susan's update, we do have the one call to City Hall function that works all the time, every day, all day long, night and day. You can call City Hall's main number, which is 456-CITY, extension 311, and speak to a live person, and you can report any type of problem, and a staff person will be called to assist you. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. I did want to comment on AB 1788, which was Richard Bloom's bill on pesticides. That bill was held in Senate Appropriations last week and has been turned into a 2-year bill. So we'll continue to track that, as I know that's something very important. I did have some very successful meetings this past week with Verizon, trying to talk to them about redundancy for cell communications here in the city in a disaster, and they have been really great about trying to find some solutions for the city if we lose power during a red flag incident or a PSPS shutdown. So we are looking at trying to make the cell communication here at City Hall redundant. So that's in process. I also wanted to comment on Malibu Tow and share a little bit of good news that I heard last week, that they have located a new site on Pacific Coast Highway, and our planning department will be working with them to come in and get the proper permits so they can start operating again here in Malibu. I know that's been something people are very concerned about, the loss of that vendor. And then briefly an update on the temporary skate park. Staff is continuing to push this forward on the timeline that the council approved. So we're working to get the site prepped and get asphalt out there, and you'll be seeing a survey online shortly where you can provide input on the type of features you'd like to see at the temporary site or at the temporary park. So that is moving forward. And lastly, I just want to remind everybody to please go on the city's website and sign up for our e-notifications and our alerts. We have a very robust system. I learned last week during the little flare-up that we had near Sarah Canyon that there are still people who aren't getting notifications from the city. So if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can come into City Hall. We will assist you. But we are pushing out information now regularly during any type of incident. We want to make sure people are getting that. So please make sure you've signed up for those alerts. And then lastly, you will all be receiving soon in the mail a big postcard that looks like this. It's double-sided and it has some very good emergency preparedness information. You can put it on your refrigerator if you still have an old school refrigerator that accepts magnets. It has a checklist of what to take when you leave, what to do to prepare your house. And so you'll start getting a lot of information from us in the mail as well. So that concludes my report, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Reva. All right, next on the agenda are council reports. Who would like to go first?
I wanted to thank everyone at the Boys and Girls Club for operating a great chili cook-off. I know everyone had a good time that visited that. It was a great thing for the community. Last week, I attended in downtown LA a Clean Power Alliance board meeting, and they resolved some issues that had gone on where Edison was not billing people proper amounts and whatnot. And there was a lot of calls that came into the call center. There were 7,000 of them. So that stuff got handled and addressed, and that's what I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. Who would like to go next?
I'll be happy to go. Mikey, if you're chomping at the bit, you can go. Okay. First of all, I want to say to Guy Blake and your son, very impressed that you manned your post during the most significant natural disaster we've had in Malibu's history, to the point where you lost your home. And I think that's a shining example, much like Steve Murphy. And unfortunately, you lost your home, and I congratulate you on getting your life back together. And hopefully, as onerous as the process has been, the city's been helpful to you, and I'm glad to see that you got your permit. But thank you very much for your selfless devotion to duty and giving to others to the point where you lost what is most dear to you. And I think that's an impressive example for the rest of the community. So thank you. I'm glad to see that things are moving forward for you. Chili cook-off. I went there on Sunday and it looked like it was very organized. I missed the exciting Saturday night evolution, but I saw Lieutenant C2 there and Kelsey, and everything seemed to be humming along quite well. And congratulations on executing a very complicated evolution in the heart of Malibu relatively incident-free from what I could tell. Karen and I went to another in a series of, along with Reva and some of our other professionals who are working with us on the school separation issue, to the SMMUSD school in Santa Monica to continue to work diligently on that. We're going to have, I mean, this is on Friday, and we're going to have another meeting on this Friday. And I am very optimistic that there will be a positive outcome, but I don't think it will be in the immediate future. But I just wanted everybody to know that this is a very difficult process. Karen and I and Reva and our negotiating team, who are excellent, we're really lucky to have the two professionals that we do, Christine and LaTanya, are going to leave no stone unturned and exhibit whatever level of endurance is necessary to make sure that we're successful in the end. I know that's not a very detailed progress report, but we're working very hard at it and are very engaged. I also met with the Verizon people today. Somebody contacted me and said, hey, I'm the Verizon guy. I'd like to brief you on what's going on. So I came down to City Hall expecting to meet one guy. There was 8 people here ready to meet with me, and I was like, whoa. They seem to be, just like the city manager said, very, very responsive to our desire to have a more robust system that will withstand the types of fires that are normal here. We live in a very high severity zone, fire hazard zone, and they are dedicated to not only improving the performance of the existing system, but to implementing some more durable systems that have their own power backup, et cetera. And I've asked them to feel free to give some hints and tips on how suggestions from them for the community and what to do during an emergency, et cetera. And I was impressed that they came out full court press on trying to make Malibu a better place for cell reception, at least for their company. Liz Stevens, thank you very much for coming. If you're still here, Liz, you still here? Okay. I keep moving forward. Keep your head down. We haven't forgotten about you, okay? I appreciate your citing my comments, and I think you read Mr. Edmiston's reply in the paper. And as I have in the past so many times, I take issue with his contention that the people in Malibu are anything other than incredibly welcoming to the public. We get more visitors per capita than any small town on planet Earth, and we love visitors. We also like to know that the visitors are going to safe places with bathrooms, with supervision, with public safety professionals ready to take care of them should anything go wrong. And a number of these public access ways that individuals have been shaken down through the years wind up being public access ways with no parking, no supervision, no bathrooms, no public safety professionals, and a lot of impact on the environment that is not looked after by those state agencies who are so insistent on having these public access ways. So it's an important issue, and I was deliberate in my comments, and I wanted to educate everyone else who is here about the problem. And the city manager and the planning director and Adrian met with me and brought me up to date on the latest of that. So I wanted to talk about that. We, along with before I came on council as a community leader in Ramirez Canyon, along with the Escondido, Sycamore Park, I should say, were successful in extinguishing the trail dedication program, which in my opinion was just a giveaway to the developers and just nothing but a headache. A lot of these public access ways are legacy things. They're kind of sleeper cells, I call them, that were extracted by the Coastal Commission long before cityhood, and they're still out there. They're lurking. Periodically, they come down and give the old, $15,000 a day fine, to people and lean on them pretty heavily. And it's kind of shocking to me that they still do that, and it's a big problem. And it's not, in the past, I think people have been sort of like, hey, they're the Coastal Commission, they can do what they want to do. I'm not so sure about that. And I'm interested as a civic leader in having a lot of visitors come here and enjoy themselves in a safe way where the government entities that are hosting them or facilitating that also look out for their safety. I'm not convinced that these state agencies are doing that, and it's something we're going to continue to address, and I'll be talking with the city manager, and we're going to try to wrestle this one so that all of our wonderful 50 million visitors that come here are having an enjoyable time, and that we look out for their safety, as is our responsibility. So thank you very much for coming down. And Mr. Haldeman, your comments about the ESHA and camping, I think that's, I mean, I'm very literate with that, as I mentioned to you on the phone when we spoke earlier, and I think that that's not a bad idea, and we're going to have to talk about that. I think that because we're downwind of any problems that occur in the Santa Monica Mountains, and everybody remembers the Corral fire, which was started by out-of-town visitors in a poorly supervised park where they started a fire. To have this sort of thing that they're talking about, which is almost like trail camping in poorly supervised areas, potentially poorly supervised areas, I think is asking for trouble. So thanks for your comments, and thank you for your engagement. And it's not easy. These are not easy, but they're not insurmountable either. And so you're right. I think that they do need to hear from the people who are going to be on the receiving end of any of these potential catastrophes that get started from these ideas. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Lance, I got your letter about the crosswalk on Corral. I agree with you. I'm going to talk to the city manager about that. Until they build it, I think that it's still addressable, and I agree with you. It's just, you know, come on. We're the ones who live with it. We're going to have to pick up the pieces. Let's be a little more intelligent about it and common sense. So thank you for taking the time to write me that letter. I appreciate that. And the Malibu tow, that's great news. Everybody loves the Malibu tow. And I'll give you a little Malibu tow story from my other job. I'm at my fire station. It's late at night, and I'm watching the sunset, and I'm thinking, oh, great, it's time to go to bed. And some kid comes walking up the road, and he's like, oh, hey, my car just went over the side of the cliff. You know, can you help me out? He was uninjured, but he managed to scamper up the side of the cliff. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll get you. We went down, and sure enough, there's this car, you know, like 25 feet down, or 15 feet. And so he said, well, my insurance company has a towing thing, so let's try that. So he got on the phone with his insurance company, and they called the tow. So we were sitting in the station, you know, 45 minutes later, no tow guy calls or anything. And I said, let me call Malibu Towing. I called Malibu Tow, boom, 10 minutes later, the guy's up there, pulls his car out, and he is on his way. So everybody loves Malibu Tow, and nobody gets to interact with them more than me in my other line of work. So I'm glad to see that they're getting to sort out their location, and they probably enjoy more community backing than anybody else here in the city of Malibu, I would say. So that's good news. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Rick, for the comments. Skylar, you've already had your comments, and Mikey's up. I want to apologize to the community and to my fellow council members and to the city staff and the city manager for my tardiness tonight. I still have to do 30 days of union work to keep my status in the entertainment industry, and I was required to be there till late tonight. I do apologize, but I'm back in the seat again. Mikey, you're up. Thank you.
Welcome, Mayor, and you can't mess with the union, so I get it. First of all, thank you to all the emails that I've gotten the last couple of days, couple of weeks. So I really appreciate all the community input. Craig's, I haven't read all of yours yet. I got to find a spare hour. I'll get to it. But thank you. I'm just kidding. Well, not about the hour, but. So I also appreciate community input. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers. MRCA, thank you. Barry, Elizabeth, Lloyd being on that. It's going to take a group effort. So obviously this is not going to be easy. It means a lot to have so much help from the community on an issue so difficult. So thank you. And Lance on the crosswalk, as I gather, to echo what Rick said, I think also I heard, maybe Reva can correct me, there will be one more community meeting on it potentially?
Yes, that's correct. We're waiting for Caltrans to confirm a date for one more community meeting. But just to set everybody's expectations low, they have been adamant in moving forward with a crosswalk at that location for safety reasons. So we have pushed back and continue to push back, and they reluctantly agreed to a second community meeting where I'm sure they'll hear what everybody thinks about that. But that's the status of it now.
Thank you, Riva. Alex or Parker, can you put up the first slide? There you go. Thank you. All right. I want to just share a little bit here about my neighborhood, and I have a point here. So we have 3 houses that are being rebuilt in Malibu West. This is Murph's house, and it's a video, but it seems a little glitchy right now. So that was the first permit issued, and he is underway. And well, I just wanted to throw that one in there. I'm going to move on, though, if I can figure out how to click. Oh, there we go. This is Susan Stiffelman's house. It's underway, too, and, well, I want to share the next part of it. Maybe. I'm going to push another button and see what happens. And here's how I first encountered Susan's house on fire Saturday morning at about 5:30 after the fire, after we spent hours saving this house. Of course, we had no idea there was an ember inside of it or embers, and it burst into flames, and it was really an important moment and realization of how much work we had to do and where we were. Another house that was big in my life on the fire was this house. This house, when I arrived at this house, there was just a tiny portion of the garage door on fire. I mean, literally 1.5 feet square. And there was a hose there, so I thought, oh my gosh, I got this one. This is great. Went over to the hose, old house, old pipes, no real water came out. And no matter what I did, I just couldn't get it out. And it's glitched here, but you'll see there was a beautifully restored, like 65 Mustang parked right there, locked. I couldn't move it. It went too. What I did go, this is frozen here, so I said, well, I'm not letting the house next door burn. So I stood in back there for quite a while with a water wand and managed to save that house with a water wand. Didn't take much water. Oh, there's sound on this one. Now this is that same house being rebuilt. Drew Leonard is doing this house. So it's really exciting in Malibu West to see the neighborhood kind of coming back to life and some great residents moving forward. But that's not my main point. My main point is every single one of these houses, and I believe potentially every house that burned in Malibu West, burned because of embers. There was not direct contact from flame. And there is a lot that each of us can do to prevent our house from burning from embers. So while we're hoping and praying that the fire department shows up, which I was sure glad when they did hours later, that was very helpful. But there's a lot we can do. And so tomorrow night at the city is a firescaping workshop, which has been mentioned twice already. My landscaping at my house, I guess kind of unintentionally, intentionally, was exactly followed the model. And I knew that my house was going to be fine. It was a really good feeling. The house is resilient already, but the landscaping caught all the embers coming in. Nothing caught fire. And I have landscaping. It's beautiful. It's all, it's all designed, it's resilient. It's made for this environment. It did not burst into flames. And the one thing that allowed me to know how well it worked was when we prepared to fight the fire, which we weren't around our house because we felt we didn't need to be, was we moved all the cushions from outside, as has been mentioned. And I missed one that was in a different location. And there was, I believe, 27 holes in that cushion. So it got absolutely pelted with embers. Luckily, it didn't burst into flames. So your landscaping makes a massive difference. So does your deck, so does if you have wood chips, well, we all know that one now, but it makes a huge difference. So I hope people will come tomorrow night, and I know quite a few people have RSVP'd because your landscaping can save your house. and really we'll do a good job doing that. Thank you. I don't know how to turn this off. Oh, there it goes. It's off. Thank you so much for doing that. What else? This last couple of weeks, I met with the homeless working group in Malibu. As you may know, a part of the Santa Monica Homeless Steering Committee, but I went to my first Malibu meeting. Finally, I could get off work to do it. And what was really interesting about it was there was a number of residents there that were just trying to, and rightfully so, saying, why aren't we making a difference? Why aren't we improving this situation? And as everyone spoke, you could really see how difficult and complicated this issue is. So I don't have the date on me. Susan does, like forgetting it. But we have the next meeting coming up. And if you're concerned, as I am.
September 25th.
Thank you. September 25th in the morning at the city. I think it was 9 or 10 in the morning. One of those. You're welcome to come join as we work to make headway on this. Malibu is going to be unable to just sort of skate by on the homeless issue. We're going to have to take real action, as we all need to, but it's really difficult.
Councilmember Pearson, it's actually September 26th at 10 a.m.
I was thinking that. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. September 26th. As part of that afterwards, Riva helped facilitate a call with our lobbyists at Cal Strategies concerning homelessness. So they're going to clue us in on what bills are making their way through that we might look to support and back that can have a positive benefit or positive impact on our community. It's like I said, a very difficult issue, but we're going to keep a really close eye on that and see what we can do on the legislative end as well. Also, this last couple of weeks, I joined a local arson watch training in my neighborhood. I've been through it before, but wanted to join some new members. If you aren't a member of Arson Watch and you feel like you want to make an impact in helping this city be more ready and prepared for fire, you should check that out. You can get a hold of me. I meant to have them post this, but I was busy and forgot. Arson Watch just put out this brochure on brush clearance fire safety, and it's particularly well timed because a lot of it, number one, talks about weed whackers, and that's what apparently started the last fire, the one at Sweetwater Mesa. So if you're unaware of how a weed whacker, a chainsaw, or a lawnmower starts a fire, you need to become aware of that, and in dangerous conditions, you need to basically not allow your crew or your gardener or whoever it is or yourself to do those activities. It can be extremely dangerous. And this is a great brochure, and I want to see maybe we can get something like this out to the community somehow. And wait, here it is in Spanish too. So seeing as a lot of the gardening crews appear to be Hispanic, it needs to probably go out bilingual. Gracias. De nada. Also, along with Mayor Pro Tem Karen Fair, we met with our new sheriff's captain, Captain Vanderhork, at the Lost Hills Station. Can report very nice man, easy to engage in conversation. We went decently deep in the short time we had on issues Malibu faced during the last disaster. So we addressed that in detail and was very encouraged at our talk. He's definitely willing, wants to be part of the community. And at some point, he's going to come and address the community, right? Riva, we're going to find a date on that?
Yes, we're going to put it on an agenda.
Okay, thank you. The chili cook-off, I thought was amazing. It was the best one ever. I was there Thursday night for the fundraiser, Friday night. I don't think I've seen so many Malibu residents gather in one place in a long time. And part of what facilitated was the excellent work by the LA sheriffs in just keeping that, it felt so safe. Everyone felt so comfortable there. And it was just a great layout. It wasn't dusty. The kids were off doing the rides. Our group was off maybe at the beer garden or other tents, and it was really well done. So hats off on that. Also was part of a meeting with the new incoming chair of the Chamber of Commerce with Riva and I. We met with Ian Roven to discuss how we might join forces going forward on the communication between the city and our Chamber of Commerce's to help our local businesses or locally owned, local serving businesses, and just business in general in Malibu, which we all know is tough. Also, last week, I'm sorry to go on so long, but a lot of stuff I want to relay. I don't even know what it was called, but we had a meeting in Agora with a number of cities related to EOC operations, emergency operations centers, and more. What was that meeting called? Roles during emergency. So I don't know so much that I learned much about roles during an emergency, but what the gentleman who mainly spoke did an excellent job of was relating how difficult it is to communicate in a huge emergency like that. He spent quite a bit of time on it. They're working on it. It's a massive logistical puzzle at best, especially when communications go down, when people from different cities can't get through roadblocks, when telephone poles and electricity are down, all of that. So interesting meeting, but it really highlights how far we have to go on improving communications in disasters like that. It's clearly a very, very difficult thing. Karen and I also met with the new fundraising group for the schools in Malibu, Malibu Lead. I'll let her talk about that more. She's been so heavily involved, but that went extremely well. And a huge thanks to Riva for really helping facilitate that. It was much appreciated. And on a personal level, the Surf Aid Cup was this Saturday, and another phenomenal event. The surf was amazing. And the Surf Aid Cup, you have a team, you have the break with just a few other teams, and the waves were perfect and uncrowded, and everyone who was there had a fantastic time, great food, great time on the beach, and they raised money for an incredibly worthy cause. So another great Surf Aid Cup at Malibu. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. And Karen, it's all you now. Thank you. And thanks for covering.
Sure. Okay, I want to say to Liz Stevens and the whole family, I really appreciate what I'll call the pain and suffering that you guys have been through with the MRCA. I find it ridiculous. Nobody has to convince me that the MRCA is a poor steward of the environment. I'm glad you brought up SB 45. I want to find out more about that. And I want to put that on our regular call with our lobbyist to find out about that. Barry and Lloyd, we've been in communications with this, everything related to the MRCA for over a year now, probably closer to a year and a half. Camping in Esha, if Sheila Kuehl doesn't understand the problem with that, I don't know who would. It's her district that got torched and burned to the ground, or her section of the county. I have the county meeting, Board of Supervisors meeting on my calendar for September 23rd. I encourage anybody else who would like to go downtown to Temple Street. If you need a ride, call me. I will drive you there. We got to go early, though. Yeah, Lloyd, I agree. Politically and environmentally tone deaf. That's a good way of putting it. And cloaking the ESHA in names like H1 and H2 doesn't fool anybody. So the tough thing is, I don't know what real leverage we have other than pressure from all of us and any of our other Las Virgenes, Malibu COG partners. So I'm not giving up, and I appreciate everybody else who's here to talk about it and make others more aware. Lance, yeah, thank you for your letter about that crosswalk / potential underpass. There was a room full of us here for that meeting whenever it was, 6 months ago. Yeah, and thank you to Riva for setting up a second meeting, which I understand Caltrans, it definitely wasn't their idea to come back. So do we have a date on that meeting?
We don't. I requested it again today from Caltrans, but I haven't heard back.
Okay, we'll definitely be publicizing that. So thanks for being on the lookout and coming again for the next go-round with them. As you can tell, the council, we've all been traveling in the same small circles, but I will say what some other people have said. Yes, Mikey, Riva, and I went week before last and met with our new sheriff's captain, Matt Vanderhork. We're very happy to get to know him and have him get to know us in this area. We got a complete tour of the station. That was eye-opening. We saw everything, the workout room, the jail, the detective's room, the booking area, the break room. And thank you to Gen C2 for giving us that tour. I too have been in regular contact with Ian Roven. He's the new executive director of the chamber. And yeah, we're trying to find ways, as many ways as possible, that we can partner with the chamber and help them support local businesses. As Rick said, school district separation negotiations continue. Everybody in Malibu wants to get this over with as soon as possible. In my opinion, it is decades overdue. And I'm not sure if Santa Monica feels the same way. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. The Boys and Girls Club, I want to thank any of them who are watching or listening, starting with Casey Ernest. I also went to the fundraiser. That was such a great event. The level of community support is really encouraging. If you don't know much about the club and would like to know more, please visit their website and consider supporting them. They really do a lot of incredible work in conjunction with the community and our school district, or I will say our local schools. I want to thank everybody who volunteered and supported the fundraiser and the entire weekend. Thank you to our sheriff, starting with Lieutenant C2, for the incredible upgrade in security this year. Sadly, these days it's necessary, and thank you for stepping up to that. Yeah, Mikey and I had a walk around with Edison regarding some of their plans and efforts to update and improve their local equipment. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that later from our Edison rep, and I assume Public Works. So the fire on Friday, August 30th, it seems like it's Fire Friday every week now. I'd like to see that end. I looked up at 11:45 a.m. and saw that fire up Sweetwater Mesa, immediately started taking pictures and trying to stay calm and send those out to people. I came over here to the city, which, doesn't it just figure that was the day that the council had given the staff off for a 4-day weekend instead of 3-day weekend for Labor Day. Thank you to Susan and Riva for showing up very quickly. And I want to give a shout out and thanks to the CERT volunteers who were here really quickly and started answering the phones and helping out as any way possible. Sarah and Paul Grisanti, and somebody I met for the first time, Lester Saft. So they really just showed up immediately and did a great job. Thanks to our first responders for putting that fire out and quickly. I came in and tried to assist the city manager with communications, along with Susan. And we were here for probably 2.5 hours until we were told it was contained. At the chili cook-off, I volunteered at the community tent, and that was a really positive change. Rather than having all these community groups in different little tents apart from each other, there was one big tent where people could kind of do one-stop shopping. I'm really happy with the way the chili cook-off is evolving. I feel like it's more of a community event than it's ever been. The Boys and Girls Club, our own city Department of Parks and Rec was in that tent. Malibu Lead, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. The Children's Life Saving Foundation, the Emily Shane Foundation, AMPS, they were all in one tent rather than apart from each other. And that was just a good way to put it. I want to thank Jen again. She's just doing so many things. Lieutenant Jennifer C2 of LA County Sheriff for organizing this training event that Mikey and Reva and I went. There were a lot of people from our city, Susan, Chris Frost, Doug Stewart, who's another public safety commissioner, Lisa Sogor. We were all there, and we had a very lengthy presentation. Mark Russo of the VOPs. We were there along with representatives from the county, the CHP, LA County Fire, State Parks, Supervisor Kuehl's office, Jeremy Wolf from Senator Henry Stern's office. And it was a very long presentation given by Carl Ekstrom, who is with LA County Sheriff. He's the head of, or correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, he's involved in the Emergency Operations Bureau for the Sheriff's Department. And we learned a lot about roles during an emergency. And like Mikey said, it's super complicated. Everybody is trying to make improvements, particularly in communications and logistics. So my understanding is that is one of a series of meetings. And I don't know if Reva or Susan can give us any information about future trainings.
We don't have anything on the calendar, but Jen with the Sheriff's Department and Susan and I are working on quarterly trainings similar to what you attended.
Okay, great. More information is definitely better. Business Roundtable was interesting this past week, as it always is the first Friday of the month. And as Mikey said, he and I and Reva met with a group from Verizon regarding their plans to improve hardening and provide backup power and redundancy in their system. So that's always a good thing. And I want to make sure everybody understands Malibu LEAD, the acronym stands for Leading Educational Advancement and Development. We had a meeting here at the city last week with their leadership. That group is replacing not only the Shark Fund, which was raising money for Malibu High School and Middle School, it's replacing the fundraising at each of the Malibu public school campuses. It's also replacing the money that was coming from the Santa Monica Malibu Education Foundation. And to be perfectly clear with everybody listening and in the room, what used to be called the Santa Monica Malibu Education Foundation has been changed. It's now called the Santa Monica Education Foundation. They have formally dropped Malibu out of their organization. There is no longer any funds, and there's no longer any consideration for Malibu. So it seems like it's okay to take, but not give, if you're Santa Monica, and I officially go on record saying that. Our school district separation team met with Santa Monica and their team this past Friday. I'll give the short story and say there has been no meeting of the minds, and not for lack of trying on our part. We are going back there again this coming Friday and hoping for a serious meeting with consideration from both parties. So in closing, I'd like to say, please take advantage of the many, many programs that the city's offering during the month of September. This is officially Disaster Preparedness Month. And for example, my husband and I will be celebrating our 36th anniversary tomorrow night at the Firescaping Symposium. So please come celebrate with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and congratulations on 36. Many more. Skylar, did you have a chance to mention our environmental sustainability meeting? Okay. So Skylar and I had an environmental sustainability meeting last week. ESA was the firm that was there in attendance, and that is to deal with the wave uprush and the coastal alignment with the elevation of water coming forward. It affects us in a big way. They will consider some of the FEMA mapping, but however, we think they're going to do a much better job for the city of Malibu. So that contract was awarded. They will have several outreaching meetings with the public. There'll be 2 actually scheduled at a minimum, so that you'll have your input. This is a great contract. They beat out Moffitt and Nichol, which was a firm we've been using in the past, but once in a while change is good, and I think these guys are right on it. They made a good presentation. There's too much in depth to talk about. Moving on to letters to the council and myself, Lance, thank you very much for your comments on the crosswalk at the restaurant there, Malibu Seafood. That is going to be a difficult one. I made that first meeting where Caltrans made a sad presentation at best. And thanks, Rob, for reaching out the way you have. I know you contact me occasionally and say I'm still trying, and I know it's up on Reva's desk as well. Thank you very much. However, we're going to have to deal with Joe on this one because he is the controlling interest from the bank down to the center of the underpass. And the ADA compliance is the one thing we'll have to consider. So we'll see if Joe is really a good neighbor and he's really about working with the city. This will be a perfect example for him to display his warmth for us. So I attended a fire safe meeting at Commissioner Doug Stewart's home in Latigo Canyon, and it looks like Latigo Canyon is going to ramp up like Malibu West did, and the Big Rock, Las Flores area, as well as Point Doom. So we're going to see these local homeowners associations moving forward with their own processing of what they want to do in fire safety. And we had a great presentation from our new fire guy right over there. Did a great job, a terrific presentation. I think everybody appreciated it. I know I did, Jerry. Thank you very much for your attendance there on your day off. It just shows good spirit, and I appreciate that. Thanks very much. Okay, moving on. Did we have any pulling of any consent calendar items? Okay, seeing no items pulled from the...
Mayor, just quickly, I gather I can stay in the room since no one pulled it, but I have to recuse on my vote from B8. 3B8.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar aside from item 3B8, and then we'll have him leave the room.
He doesn't need to leave the room. You could just move the...
All right, I'll move the item, the consent calendar.
Without my vote on.
Without
3B8.
Commissioner Pearson, I'm sorry,
Commissioner-
Councilmember Pearson will not be voting
Councilmember
on that.
Pearson's vote on 3B8.
Councilmember Pearson's vote will not appear on that approval. Can I get a second for the...
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On now, we're up for 6A, it looks like, 6A?
4A.
4A. 4A, thank you for corrections. 4A. Okay, on the water softeners, we've had some data in the past on this. It's interesting stuff. If you read the staff report, it's very detailed, and I think we look forward to having somebody give us a good upgrade on this. And it looks like, Andrew, you're at bat.
Yes, Mayor Wagner, thank you.
Take it away.
So this is essentially a housekeeping item. The item was brought before the City Council in October 9th, 2017, and unfortunately it did not follow through to a second reading. So the staff report that's in your packet is essentially the same staff report, just being updated to discuss the past meeting that occurred and current status. Essentially, what this is, for those who weren't on council at the time, is a ban on self-regenerated water softeners in the Malibu Civic Center area. And what's at issue here is the water quality of water treated at the Civic Center wastewater treatment facility. Any amount of salts in the water could be a potential issue for the reuse of the water for landscaping. And so in design of the facility, our engineer advised us it was very important for us to do everything possible to limit the amount of salts coming in through the intake. So this item was brought to council, as I said, back in October 2017, as a ban on a certain type of water softeners that produce salts in the backflow reject water that comes out when they're cleaned periodically. And so they are a problem potentially for our Civic Center wastewater facility. And because of that, we want to prohibit their use. This ordinance would apply only in the Civic Center area and only to commercial facilities. When this item was last brought, there were some changes to it made with council input. And it originally was conceived to apply citywide and also intended to address potential impacts with on-site wastewater systems. That part was taken out, so the ordinance before you only addresses the commercial properties in the Malibu Civic Center area. There are available options for businesses that still want to have soft water. There's a type of exchange tank that you can do this operation. Instead of putting the salts in at the site, you can do it at an off-site location so that none of the salt brine is discharged to the sewer. And there are also reverse osmosis systems. So what staff has for you is the ordinance, as I said, that was amended at the meeting when it was last heard, essentially the same ordinance that was passed by the council sitting at that time. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Andrew. Great presentation. I found it interesting and fascinating because it was very educational. Thanks for that staff draft. We do have two speakers on 4A. Bill Riggs, you're up first, followed by Carlos Morales. So Bill, followed by Carlos. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Bill Riggs. I'm the Regional Technical Manager for Culligan Water, CRH California Water. Our company has 9 locations, servicing the San Ynez Valley all the way down to California's southern border. We employ over 350 employees and their families. The company is a member of the Pacific Water Quality Association and the International Water Quality Association. Members of our company have held leadership positions and played significant roles in both organizations. Along with me also tonight is Carlos Morales. He is a general manager of Culligan Water of Northern Los Angeles County and Ventura County. In our combined 55-year tenure with Culligan, we have been deeply involved in the chloride, or otherwise known as the salt discharge issue. Mr. Morales is most up to speed regarding the specific findings of the Santa Clarita Valley. Following the passage of California Senate Bill 475, Senator George Runner held a campaign to require the removal of previously owned water softeners. The Los Angeles Sanitation Districts and the City of Santa Clarita maintain that the failure to pass this election would result in significantly higher sewer rates and potential construction of a discharge line to run through Santa Paula to Oxnard. That would require at the cost of many millions of dollars. This, of course, they maintain would be paid by the residents of the Santa Clarita Valley. The election, of course, passed. Ultimately, over 7,000 water softeners had been ethically sold or removed from the valley. Senator Runner was later quoted as saying that he had been baited and switched by the sanitation agencies. While there was a financial incentive paid when removing these softeners, the desired outcome was not achieved and the objective at that time was not met. Our industry has repeatedly pointed out to both regional water quality control boards, the sanitation districts, and the City of Santa Clarita that at times of the year the raw water incoming was at a higher rate than the standard that they were being required. Frankly, many in the valley felt that eminent domain of a personal property right had been executed. While an argument can be made that because individuals can contract for portable water softening exchange like mentioned, and our company happily provides that service, the cost is significantly higher than making a capital investment and maintaining an automatic water softener. Our industry is just asking that you include us in your discussions. We have a wealth of experience and knowledge that would be beneficial to your discussions. When you last discussed this in 2017, we were told we would be noticed, but did not think that it would be by an introduction of an ordinance with no notice. An independent university study on a similar action said that unfortunately the ban of automatic water softeners proven to be ineffective when it came to meeting the original objectives. We would really like to just be a part of the solutions. rather than a mere observer on your negative actions. We would hope that you remove this ordinance from your agenda and enlist our industry to search for a solution. Our customers in your city and your constituents deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bill. And Carlos, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Mireles. I've been working in the industry since December 8, 1984, specifically on the potable exchange. So I know how this product can benefit and cannot benefit. Then I see how, for instance, in Santa Clarita Valley, I've been involved in there. Since that time, remember the ban in July 1997, when those softeners were prohibited, under the assumption that that will help the salinity issue. Come to find out that the incoming water from that's supposed to be treated, or it was impacted by this removal of the softener, or discharge from the softener, was already at the level where it cannot be treated any further. Nevertheless, the industry that I worked for was impacted by those softeners that were lawfully and rightfully and sold by our industry. Now, 20 years after that or so, we still, Santa Clarita has the same issue. When no softeners are allowed there, commercially or domestically, but then again, the salinity issue is still the same. So it wasn't relief. And nevertheless, now there's talks among the council members on that city that now they are going to have to build a desalination plant in order to alleviate that. So in a few words, a deep study needs to be done and what we need to achieve, other than look at the easy target that we believe are the softeners, and look into what is the really issue and how our industry can help the industry. And my take on this is this: when you have a softener in your home, that really helps, other than being detrimental to the salinity issue, impact on the sewer systems. Why? Because your cleaning products, which are TDS or salinity and the essence, it can be diminished by 75%. So if you don't have a softener, then you have to use your cleaning agents at full capacity. If you look in the back of your detergents, on your soaps, etc., products, if you look in the back of your label, you will see that 50% of those agents in that bottle are solving agents. Now, if you don't have a softener, then you can minimize the use of detergents and cleaning agents up to 75%. That offsets the discharge of salinity and on the sewer systems. So that's my point. Well, please consider us. We would like to be part of the solution. We have some inputs to give. Like I said, myself, I've been there forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And now we're up to council. Would anybody like to start? Skylar?
So, to be clear, Andrew, this ordinance is just for the commercial properties, not the residential properties that are within that hook up to the system?
The ordinance addresses any property that is connected to the Civic Center wastewater treatment facility in Phase 1. So those are all commercial properties except for residential properties in 2 subdivisions that have not yet been built. So there are no existing water softeners of this type in any residences that this would affect.
Okay. Do we have, so I imagine that we have data that says that if we get salt and people are using these softeners, that's going to negatively impact the system, and that's the reason why we're discussing this. I see somebody from Public Works nodding their head, and I remember one of the guys, when I think we built the system, making a big issue out of that. It's odd that we have different information coming from the people that are in that business. I understand that, but I'm just the council going to vet this thing and see where it goes.
So I got a question. Are you done?
No, I was just going to let you have it.
Oh, okay.
Go.
it's normal for people who see their industry or livelihood being challenged, whether it be the plastic water guys or the balloon guys. You should have seen the balloon guys out here. They were crazy. They freaking beat us into submission. So I get that. And it's hard for us non-professionals to sift the wheat from the chaff. You guys are dedicated to your profession, and you're like, what the heck? Another city is acting on misinformation, et cetera. So I'm trying to figure out, is this a compliance issue? Because I'm looking at the thing that says the city was advised by the wastewater engineer that the introduction of self blah, 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 blah could cause and could lead to fines. So are we just going off the opinion of the admitted expert as the engineer, or is that a compliance thing where the regional water quality board says, no, you have to get rid of these things? So if that might help these gentlemen to direct their industry preservation efforts to the regional water quality board, if that's the case. So just want to know, is it compliance, or are we just kind of proactively making sure that we don't get fined for something?
So a couple things to consider here while I'm throwing my phone on the ground, that our plant really needs, operates really efficiently when it doesn't have salt in it. And that's why we take great measures to make sure all of our systems are watertight. We don't have any groundwater. We don't have anything, the salt or the ocean water getting in the system. Just the processes we have the plant are really sensitive, especially when we have salt water in it. So when you have these soft water conditioners, especially in these facilities, when they have to backwash, they backwash with this brine, the really high concentration of salt and minerals that cause really issues with our plant. Our plant operator really has to adjust the treatment process to make sure we're in compliance. So yes, it is a compliance, but it's also an operation to make sure we can be in compliance.
Okay.
And I'll add to that there is no current compliance issue with it, but what we're trying to do is head off a potential future compliance issue and keep the water coming out of the plant as low in salt as possible to give our customers the maximum flexibility of different types of landscape that they can use.
Okay, and I assume that the engineer quoted here, or not quoted, but cited, has experience with this in other locations.
Yes, that was the design engineer for design of the wastewater treatment facility, and they're a very experienced company that designs wastewater treatment plants and water recycling plants across the United States.
Okay, and gentlemen out there, we're used to dealing with government entities that tell us things about water quality that we don't necessarily agree with. So I get it. I do get it. Maybe in the future we can include them in on discussions for things that we do in the future so that they are included. I think that's a good point. Just a suggestion. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Rick. Mikey or Karen? No questions, Mikey? I just would reiterate that I read this report twice and found it thoroughly entertaining, because I know it sounds strange, but I have a condo that will be hooking up to this system, and I'm following it as a property owner in the near area. And the data that was in the report was terrific. Thank you once again for your elaborations and your explanations, because you made it easy enough for a layman to understand. We also have another entity outside, beyond us, the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And you have Fran Diamond, you have a number of people that have been watching this plant. And they have their own interest in making sure that we produce a high-quality, clean water for the purple pipes. And there's a lot of data that they will have thrown in here if we go the course that we may not go. But my idea is that we follow through with this. And we can always have these gentlemen measure the outputs, because that's public information. So in the future, it could be something that could be redone. But for now, with this new plant, and with a lot of questionable people trying to get into the plant in the way of how many people want to get into it, because it's working so well. I think we just have to leave things alone and roll with this. And that's why we'll bring it to a vote. And Trevor, I know you're going to read it, and then we'll get to it.
All right, so I believe the motion would be to adopt an ordinance number 451, an ordinance of the City of Malibu determining the project as categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and adding Chapter 9.40 to Title 9 of the Malibu Municipal Code, prohibiting the installation or use of self-regenerating water softeners for properties connected to the Civic Center Water Treatment Facility, and amending sections 1.10040 of Chapter 1.10, Administrative Citations and Penalties, of Title I, General Provisions of the Malibu Municipal Code to reflect that violations of Chapter 9.40 shall be subject to the city's administrative penalty provisions.
Thank you, Trevor. So we get a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Very well, then, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Very well, we're moving on to 6A.
Mayor Widener,
Yeah,
can we take
sorry.
a short 5-minute break? Would that be okay?
Yes, it's 8:01. Let's take a 5-minute break. Be back here, make it 8:11. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, he's headed up, yeah.
Okay, there's one more.
Okay, 6A. Okay, so they're in order.
Okay, and some of these are.
Good evening, members of the community. We're back from our break at 8:12. Thank you for being prompt, council members. Appreciate that, and Trevor. We're on to 6A. And 6A has a position for me that I must recuse myself on because I am a property owner in Phase 2. And if this ever becomes anything in the way of litigation, I would not want to impact the city or the council members' decisions because I do have a property inside the new Phase 2. And to elaborate a little bit on that, I think, Trevor, would you just kind of give us a more legal interpretation of what I'm trying to explain?
Sure. After discussing it with you, Mr. Mayor, it seems in abundance of caution that your decision to recuse yourself on this item would make sense given the potential for there to be some type of effect on you personally in terms of when Phase 2 comes through or the form or the costs involved. So I agree with the recusal.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate it very much. I will leave the community in the capable hands of Karen, and I will be out in the lobby. And if somebody could come wake me up after it's over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, item 6A.
Let's
Do we have
wait. Can we just wait for
excuse me?
wait for the mayor to leave the room? Let the record reflect that Mayor Wagner has now left the room.
Sorry about that. Thank you. All right, 6A, do we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'm going to give a little brief background, and then Rob DeVoe with our Public Works Department will give a more detailed presentation. I had a moment of being in Groundhog Day today, reading all the correspondence that was coming in regarding this item and remembering the fight that the city had with the regional board and the state water board. For those of you who were by my side during that time, you'll remember that the city really worked hard to prevent the wastewater treatment facility from even becoming a reality. And the short of story of a very long story was ultimately the city agreed to disagree with the water board on the reasons of why we would have to move forward with the treatment facility. With that being said, I'm extremely sensitive and aware of the community's concern of what a sewer system means to this community, about the potential for growth and the implications on land use. And so I say that just as a background to how we got to this item here this evening. The city was mandated by the State Water Board and the Regional Water Board to proceed with development of a water treatment facility. We completed phase 1 as mandated, and that part opened last year in September. And we are now under the mandated phase 2 of the facility prohibition area, and we're mandated to complete phase 2 by November 2024. Earlier this year, the city staff started receiving requests from a variety of property owners asking to participate in phase 2. Some of them were in phase 1, some weren't in any phase, some were in phase 3. And in conversations with the city attorney, it was very clear that the city staff doesn't have the authority to either approve or deny any of these requests. And so on May 13th, we brought forward an item to the city council suggesting a permit application process so that we could get all the information needed on the different requests to participate in phase 2 and bring those applications forward to the council. And so that is how we got to where we are tonight. The city staff has zero opinion on what should be done or not to be done. We're here to present the facts and the capacity of the facility and let the council decide on anything that has any land use implications. So I hope that clarifies some of the comments that came in and will assist some of the speakers in their comments here this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob DeBoe, our Public Works Director, and he'll give a further report. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So tonight, I'm going to give you an update on those properties seeking to participate in the Phase 2 Civic Center Water Treatment Facility project. So the map on the screen now is showing the prohibition zone, which is in black, and the 3 phases that are included in this project. The yellow phase, which is, or yellow color, is Phase 1, which was completed this last September 2018. The orange color is Phase 2, which we are currently under design and, as Reva mentioned, mandated to complete that project by November 2024. The purple is Phase 3. Now, Phase 3 is not it's a phase that if the water quality from Phase 1 and 2 do not improve significantly, then we must move forward with Phase 3. So Phase 3 is really dependent on the outcome of Phase 1 and 2. We're doing an extensive groundwater water sampling to make sure we have the data to support the regional board's conclusion either to include Phase 3 or not. So those are the 3 phases that we have for the prohibition area. This next map is showing the sewer collection system, and it's broken down to the 3 phases. The green color is Phase 1, which I mentioned it was completed last September. That's serving all the properties that are in Phase 1 and collecting all the wastewater and bringing it to the plant. The orange color is the wastewater collection system that we are planning to put in for Phase 2. And like I mentioned, we're currently in design and we are planning to complete that by November 2024. And then the blue color you can see is Phase 3, which if that phase goes through, must be completed by November 2028. So in all, we received 16 applications to be included in Phase 2. And what I did is I put in the locations of these applications according to the prohibition map and the different phases. The blue color are those properties that are in Phase 3 that are seeking to go into Phase 2. The green color, which is on the right-hand side along PCH, are in Phase 3, but they were submitted in a little bit late, but we included them anyway. The red color are those properties that are either outside the prohibition or outside any phasing, or those properties that are seeking additional wastewater flow. So I'll go into detail each one of these properties and give exact information on what they're seeking. So the first set of properties is on Malibu Road. The first application is a property that's a zone single family. It's currently vacant, and that property would generate about 366 gallons per day. The second application is exactly the same. It's single family zone. It's vacant, 366 gallons per day. The third one is exactly the same. It's single family zoning. It's vacant and 366 gallons per day. And the last one here on Malibu Road is zone single family. It's currently vacant and has a potential of producing 700 gallons per day. Also on this map, you can see an orange line that I have drawn on there, and that orange line represents a new pipeline that would have to be constructed to convey all the wastewater from these properties over to the existing pipeline that we put in with phase one on the right-hand side. That new pipeline is, hold on a second here, is about 1,000 linear feet. The next set of properties is on Harbor Vista Drive up by Malibu Canyon Road. Application number 5 is zone single family. It's developed and it has a potential of producing 366 gallons per day. Application number 6 is on the top left-hand side is zone single family. It's currently vacant with the potential of producing 366 gallons per day. These two properties here would require a new wastewater line on Harbor Vista with a new pump station down at the bottom that will convey all the wastewater up to Malibu Canyon Road, where we'll be installing in a new pipeline for phase 2. All of that wastewater will be conveyed down Malibu Canyon Road down to our treatment plant. The next phase of properties here is on PCH. Application number 7 is zone commercial. It's currently developed and it has 114 gallons per day. Number 8 is zone commercial again. It's developed and it produced 454 gallons per day. Number 9 is also commercial. It's developed and produces 206 gallons per day. Now, the next two green ones are in phase 3. They were received late, but I'm going to provide you those information on those. This is application number 10. It's zone commercial. It's developed. It produces 4,850 gallons per day. Application number 11 is zone commercial. It's currently vacant. The applicant has stated that they are seeking to build a a hotel at this location, and that will produce 2,700 gallons per day. The orange line on PCH in here is a new pipeline to serve these properties. It's around 1,000 linear feet that will connect into the pipeline that's installed in phase 2. And so that will convey all their wastewater down to Cross Creek and eventually down to Legacy Park Lift Station. The next property here is on Malibu Road. It's application number 12. It's currently zoned single family. It's currently vacant. The applicant has indicated that they want to convert this one single family resident parcel into 14 single family homes. That will produce 5,125 gallons per day of wastewater from this location. The green line above on Malibu Canyon Road, Malibu Road, is an existing pipeline that was installed in phase 1. No additional improvements would need to happen for that property to connect. The next property is on Civic Center Way. It's application number 13. It's a commercial property. It's known as La Paz Development. It's currently vacant. They have approval to develop 132,000 square foot of development. The applicant is seeking to convert 10,000 square foot of retail to 10,000 square foot of restaurant. And that conversion, or that switch from retail to restaurant, produces more wastewater, and they're asking for an additional 6,534 gallons per day. Down at the bottom of the screen, there is a wastewater line down there that they'll be able to connect to. Number 14 here is on Malibu Road. It's zoned single family. It's currently vacant. And the applicant is seeking to increase development on this property from 1 single-family home to 3 single-family homes. And that increase will produce 398 gallons per day. And once again, the green line on Malibu Road is the current pipeline that was installed in phase 1. The next set of properties is the Malibu Country Estates. It's application number 15. They have 107 single-family homes. It's developed and it will produce 39,162 gallons per day. This property would require an installation of about 3,000 linear feet of pipeline that will connect into the existing pipeline on Malibu Canyon Road. It would also require a new pump station to convey all the wastewater from that area to our collection system on Malibu Canyon Road. Last property is on Civic Center Way. It's application number 16. It's zoned commercial. The applicant has indicated that they wish to develop the property into 46,500 square foot of commercial, and this will result in 7,601 gallons per day. This parcel will require approximately 400 linear feet of new pipeline to connect the property to the wastewater line that's at the corner of Civic Center and Webway. So here's a map again of all the properties showing how the different locations for all of the applicants that are seeking. A couple of things that I want to bring up. One of them is how much capacity do we have to accommodate additional flow? Based on our conversations with our design engineers and most importantly, our plant operator, we feel confident that we have the capacity up to about 10,000 gallons per day of extra flow we can accommodate, and that's the absolute max that we could accommodate when having to do any major upgrades. For example, phase 2 we have. Let me back up. Phase 1 we have a design capacity of about 190,000 gallons per day. Phase 2 we have 361,000 gallons per day. That's our design improvements that we're going to do to phase 2. Now we could accommodate 10,000 more gallons, or 10,000 gallons per day more than that 361 to accommodate these additional parcels if the council wishes to add those. Another item that I like to bring up too is that phase 1, 2, and 3 went through an extensive environmental process. Any applicants that are outside of phase 1, 2, and 3, or are seeking additional wastewater flow would require some additional environmental documentation and processes. We feel that some of these processes may affect our deadline to complete phase 2 by the November 2024 deadline. And lastly, staff hasn't gone through to fully calculate what the additional cost would be to add any parcels to the phase 2 project. A couple of things that these properties, if council elects, they would be required to pay for the additional design cost and any additional pipeline and collection system that would be required to connect their properties up to the collection system. With that, we're seeking council's direction on whether to add these properties to phase 2, and I'm available for additional questions.
Mayor, I also just wanted to add to his presentation, just for a little bit of clarity, that any decision that the council makes regarding wastewater doesn't have anything to do with the entitlement process. So any applicant seeking to do anything different than what is zoned on their property would still have to go through an entitlement process. And then just to reiterate what Rob did say about phase 3 and the funding, I've spoken with our bond counsel very preliminarily on this, and he's concerned about the change in direction if we start to include phase 3, and we would really want to be able to provide more information on what those costs might be for those property owners in phase 3. I'm assuming that those property owners think they would be able to participate in funding like we did for phase 1, which was through state revolving fund loans, and due to the complexity of starting phase 3 before it was mandated and the kind of checkerboard applications throughout the map that we've received, it probably is not feasible to be able to get any state funding for this, and so that would greatly impact how this moves forward. So there's quite a few complications, and we're happy to go into any depth that you'd like on it.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Riva. We do have a lot of public speakers and quite a few people here who look like they've given their minutes to another speaker for more time. So I will read them in batches, and if you could please try to get ready to come up to the front so we save time. The first speaker is Chris DeLoe. The second speaker is Bruce Silverstein. And the third speaker is Nicole, I apologize in advance, Farnoosh. Okay, thank you.
I had a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if it's queued up or.
Give it 1 second.
Yeah, that's Dawn's presentation. So it's the Knoll property. That's the one. Thank you very much. Good evening, council members. Christopher DeLoe, Schmitz & Associates. I'm here tonight on behalf of Third Point Land Company. They're the owner of the property in question, which is property number 14 in the staff report. It's located at 23907 Malibu Road. The application mistakenly identified the parcel as 23900. So I just want to clarify for the record that the correct address is 23907, and that was recently just an address issued by the city. So that was probably the reason for the mistake, because they just issued the address. And this is the property vis-a-vis the phasing map. And you can see it's in phase 1. And it was assessed in phase 1 at a standard rate of 700 gallons per day for an estate-size home. The property is 4.35 acres. It is allowed 4 units per acre, or 1 unit per quarter acre, single-family medium. The property could be developed with up to as much as 17 condominium units. There's no ESHA or other constraints that would preclude the development of such a condominium complex. That being said, we are only proposing to do a lot split, and the client would like to do 2 houses on the subject property. That is our plan, and we have plans forthcoming. So what we have done is we are requesting an additional 722 gallons per day. That was in the application. The staff report notes an additional 398 gallons per day was requested, but we requested in the application 722 gallons per day. That is essentially 2 366 square foot 366 gallon per day allocations. We want to be able to do either 2 large homes or potentially 3 small homes, depending upon the entitlement process and what the Planning Commission and the Council's prerogative is. So we're just leaving some flexibility, but it is our plan to do 2 homes. The additional 722 gallons per day we're requesting represents 0.1% of the entire treatment capacity for this plant. So I understand the comments, but there is an existing water main right out front, or sewer main right out front of the property. The property's already served by it. We wouldn't have to do any infrastructure improvements, and we're only asking for a very small amount. Now, the wastewater treatment facility, we talked about capacity a little bit, and I'll have to get to this pretty quick. Don will talk about it more. But in the EIR, the assimilative capacity of the Civic Center is over 700,000 gallons. I think the constraint, the staff report identifies the assimilative capacity as the constraint, but I believe that the treatment works is the constraint here. It's simply bringing in more treatment work to, if needed, to do so. So I question the 10,000 gallon additional capacity. I believe there's a lot more additional assimilative capacity and potential capacity for the treatment works. But our property, again, is only 700 and some odd gallons we're asking for, which is 1/10 of 1%. Thank you. Appreciate your consideration of our application.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next speaker, Bruce Silverstein, followed by Nicole Farnouche. And after that, Taylor Megdal for 4 minutes. Okay.
I believe I have 1 extra minute from Beatrice.
Okay, go, 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Sorry, what's your name? Can I just, give me 1 minute to find it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So good evening again. I appreciated the city manager's opening remarks about the staff not really having a position at all on this, and this being a matter for city council. The one thing I heard, which really surprised me, was that the staff had been informed by the city's attorney that they could neither grant nor deny these requests. I have a really hard time believing that something which isn't provided for by the city and which would require all this construction that isn't provided for by the city already can't be denied by the city staff, subject to a specific application being made to a body above them, because there's no authority to grant that request in the first place, which is a denial. So it seems to me this is not really the proper process in the first place. One of those properties I noticed is the Smith, and it was presaged by the wrong slide being put up, is the Smith property. That's a property that actually has documented wetlands on it that is an issue related to the SCE property. Leaving those things aside, I spoke earlier about the vision statement and the mission statement, which are a part of the city's code, and which I believe ought to be guiding every decision this council and every other body of the city makes when there is not a requirement to make a decision in one direction or another. This is a discretionary decision. This is not even like an issue where if they're already where the proper sewage, could they subdivide property, then they have to satisfy certain requirements. But if they satisfy them, you've got to grant it. If they don't satisfy them, you deny it. This is completely discretionary. And it is to further commercialize, to further suburbanize this city, and it is the mission and vision of the city to not do that. You don't have to do it. You're being asked for permission that you have complete discretion to grant or deny. Now, I've seen some speculation that there's a fear denying these requests could be viewed as a taking. I don't know whether that's a concern, a genuine concern that anybody on this council might have, but I've seen that floated as a concern. I can't understand how that could be either. Certainly, I mean, these properties were purchased in distressed situations. I mean, they don't have the sewer. They're not being diminished in value. They're not being prevented from doing anything that the purchasers of the properties couldn't have done when they purchased it and couldn't do today. They're asking for a special authorization. They're asking for special treatment, additional permission. If anything, they're asking the city to increase the value of their property, which is the opposite of a taking if it's denied. It's simply leaving the status quo. So this process seems to be, to me, very, very scant. I mean, for this council to be just gone through those properties, told they're the ones that are asking for this additional water treatment. Only requirement was if the system can handle it. There are all kinds of other policy considerations that have to be made. And why not have them go through all the hoops of finding out whether they even environmentally can do these things before putting the city to the question of whether they ought to be allowed to? Because what I heard was there's still a lot of work that would need to be done, environmental analysis, even if the city were to approve expanding the water district to the sewer district to them. But they may not even be able to meet those hoops. Why put the cart before the horse? Let them demonstrate that they're environmentally capable, that they satisfy all other kinds of policy considerations, and only then determine whether the city ought to grant them permission to do this if there's adequate flow. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, next up, Nicole Farnoosh, and then Taylor Megdal, and that's followed by Eric Greer.
Hi, I also had a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Nicole Farnoosh of Schmitz & Associates, and I'm representing the property owners Lonnie and Laura Vidari, who own 23704 Harbor Vista Drive in the Malibu Overlay District. Their property is listed as application number 5. Their property, as you can see, which is highlighted in green, is currently in phase 3 and in the moratorium prohibition area. The subject property, as it currently stands, is developed with a roughly 2,200 square foot house, and the applicants at this time have no plans on increasing the square footage or the flows for the property. They simply would like to connect to phase 2 as opposed to phase 3. Also, as you can see, the property is adjacent and surrounded by properties in phase 1, including the La Paz property. The council staff report notes a requirement of installing approximately 1,200 linear feet of pipelines to the property and assumes that a sewer would need to be extended to the north to connect to the proposed main for HRL that runs down Malibu Canyon to the plant. It also notes that an additional pump station would need to be installed to convey the wastewater up to Malibu Canyon. It was our plan to run the sewer line to the southwest and connect to the existing sewer main on Civic Center Way, down La Paz Parcel C, which is actually owned by the city, and to discuss with the owners of the adjacent properties their amenability to the same. Running the sewer main down through the knolls in this location would be preferred to pumping it up to Malibu Canyon. And also, as we understand it, there is an interest by another property owner in the neighborhood to connect to the Civic Center main in the same manner. Oops. Lastly, I want to emphasize to the council that we are not requesting additional flows as the staff report stipulates. Specifically, the treatment facility was designed with a total capacity of 506 gallons per day, with a possible addition of 10,000 gallons per day as discussed for all 3 phases, meaning it already took into account the properties that would be coming in for each phase. Thus, the numbers cited as new additional capacity for the property is not correct, as these numbers were already allocated in the total capacity for all 3 phases. To reiterate, our client's properties in the moratorium prohibition area. With phase 2 construction slated to finalize in 2024, i.e. 5 years from now, the MOU includes a 3rd phase that only might be implemented. It is seemingly unfair to the property owners in the phase 3 prohibition area to have to wait potentially another decade to connect to the system, especially seeing that the options and the capacity for the flows are currently available. That'll wrap up my presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. The next speaker is Taylor Megdal, and you have 1 extra minute. Your other person is Chris Huddleston, who is here, yes? Okay. After this, Eric Greer, and then Brian Gordon.
I actually probably will not take all of Chris's time. My intent is to keep this brief. But I actually also want to preface my comments tonight with, I think this is a good exercise. I mean, we have been tasked to make environmentally conscious decisions with development, and getting people on a central sewer is part and parcel that. So to the extent there is extra capacity, it makes environmental sense, it makes common sense to allow it. Obviously, where we're going to allow it, the priorities of where we allocate it are, I think fair questions of the council, but I think the endeavor is smart. And I guess on that segue, I'd like to say, we're residents of Malibu and we're looking to build single-family homes for our families on a specific property we did buy that is in Phase 3. It's 24041, 24051, and 24057 Malibu Road, which are number 1s, 2, and 3 in the staff report. It's on the land side of Malibu Road between the Crummer property and the Malibu Road East beach access. And from a sewers perspective, as Rob, who we work closely with, indicated, would be an additional 900 feet of linear sewage pipeline. We have actually been working with Rob and Riva, thank you all for their patience with us, on this concept for 2 years after hearing what HRL had accomplished, because HRL, as we all know, went from Phase 3 to Phase 2 in a similar maneuver, kind of establishing the precedent of this, which I think is why, these applications are in front of you. But about our project specifically, we are just looking to build family-style homes slightly earlier than, I would say, unpredictability of Phase 3. So to the extent we could be put in Phase 2, maybe we have a more finite time that we can build our dream family homes. And the idea, I hear all these commercial endeavors and hotels applying for it and so forth, but to the extent we can give them to houses that are R1 zone that increases the amount of Malibu citizens that live in this beautiful place, I think that should be the priority. I know in our particular case, it won't trigger an additional environmental review. We're not maxing out the FAR. We're not spec home builders. We're just trying to build our Malibu lives slightly earlier than maybe the unpredictable Phase 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. Next.
One other note, too, we're willing to pay for all the infrastructure as well. Rob had mentioned we might have to foot the bill. We are happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Eric Greer, then Brian Gordon, and then John Mazza with 4 minutes. So everybody please get ready. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Geyer from Glazer Weil. I am here on behalf of my client, the Parencio Foundation. John Parencio regrets that he's not able to be here tonight. He was unable to make it due to the short notice of the item. My client's property is identified as property number 12 in the staff report. This property was zoned by the city to allow for single-family homes per acre, and we're here to preserve those property rights. Adequate wastewater flow is essential to ensuring that the land can be used as the city zoned the property. Additionally, we are a bit concerned with how the property is classified in the staff report. Rather than being a separate designation as requesting additional flow, it should be considered in the first group, which is designated more generally as applications from Phase 3. As mentioned earlier, the nature of our application is to ensure the land can be used consistent with how the city zoned it. We are hoping for a favorable outcome, and we believe that more information than is provided in the staff report is needed before the City Council can make a fully informed decision. We support the idea of continuing this item for further consideration at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Nobody gets it right the first time.
I know the feeling. We've got Brian Gordon, followed by John Mazza, and followed by Craig Hill.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to make an application. We submitted a detailed letter as an appendix to our application. I only want to highlight one thing on that application, and that is to put our application in context. This is the La Paz property, item number 13, and we're seeking to increase the restaurant use from 10,000 feet to 20,000 feet. It's not an additional square footage, it's just merely a conversion of retail to restaurant. The context I want to point out is that if you look at the other shopping centers in the civic center area that have restaurants, the restaurant use averages around 29% of the total square footage. If you look at the vacant properties in the civic center that the city has allocated wastewater to, those properties have been allocated 20% restaurant use, 80% retail use. In comparison to that 29% and 20% respectively, our property is just over 7.5% restaurant use. By increasing the restaurant use for our property, we would be going from 7.5% to just over 15%, still well below the 20% that the city has allocated to the vacant land, and just over half of the 29% of the other applications. We understand that approval for the wastewater to go ahead, as the city manager mentioned, is not an approval of the additional restaurant use. That would be a separate application to be heard before the Planning Commission. It's purely wanted to put the numbers in context for our project. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. The next speaker is John Mazza, followed by Craig Hill, followed by Elizabeth Stevens. And John, you have 4 minutes as long as Richard Lawrence is here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the Malibu Township Council. Our most famous poet in Malibu said, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows." And we can see which way the wind blowing is here. So what I want to point out is we founded Malibu because of sewers and development. Then we went through a process of development rights getting given away, and that was Measure M. It was defeated overwhelmingly by the citizens. It included some of these properties. It included the citizens turning down 14 houses on the Parencio property, and several other things. Now, one of the problems with this is we are exceeding what is required. When we negotiated with the Regional Quality Water Board, we said, okay, they wanted everything, and we got it down to phase 1 and phase 2. And if, and I think Rob got it backwards, if the river cleans up by 50%, then phase 3 comes in. Well, we all know there's not a chance that's going to happen. One coyote up the canyon will change that. And we just know phase 3 is not going to happen. Phase 3 covers areas that there's no way they're even in this watershed, like the other side of Sweetwater Mesa, Harbor Vista, okay? But what happens is people want to come in here and develop stuff they know they're not going to have a sewer for on phase 3. Especially, the most absurd one is the wetlands. It is specifically excluded from this process. If you look on the map, it's gray, it's not purple. It was taken out because it's a wetland. And you want to add it back in. You're going to change your Regional Water Quality Board permit. And so Don mentioned, gee, you only have 500,000 gallons in your tank, but really we need 700 because we can build that much here. This is what it's all about. And so I think you really ought to consider, why are we taking houses that we will probably never have to sewer and projects because they're in phase 3? And I know all you guys were around, except maybe Karen, for the water board hearings. You know that phase 3 is very questionable. And what you're doing now is creating more development to get into phase 2. You're putting it in places where there is absolutely no need at the top of Harbor Vista. A drop of water there would take 200 years to get to the creek. So what I really want you to think about is, what's the mission statement of Malibu? Why did we become a city? Why did we fight the water board for 4 years? Why did we spend $1 million on legal fees? Why did people vote against Measure M? And why do we need to do this? Okay? Because, and there's only one answer to that, because people who do not have the right to use that sewer want it so they can develop. And do we need another big hotel at the pier? Do we need the Malibu Inn torn down and become another hotel? These are all things in the future. And as the gentleman here said, these aren't entitled yet, but boy, it looks like they're going to be. They've been talked about for years. That's important. Okay, that's important to the people, and the people are the ones who vote for you. And we have a highway that is gridlocking. We do, and when, say, for example, he talks about the Paws getting another 10,000 square feet of restaurants. That's half of an office building. It's not a shopping center, it's half office building. So now he's 40%. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Craig Hill, followed by Elizabeth Stevens, followed by Don Schmitz.
Good evening, Council. Happy Septic Smart Week. Not to compromise my impartiality, I just want to ask a couple questions and that for you to think about. One, echoing a little bit what John said about the mission statement. Just asking, is this growth inducing? Does this in any way compromise the statement's commitment to sacrificing urban and suburban conveniences? So that's sort of question one. Keep your eye on the mission statement. Number two, I know a couple things about groundwater, maybe not quite as much as Norm, but a fair bit, having grown up in Big Rock for decades and studying all those reports and so forth. And I wonder about how the data works on this. The very first sentence of the report here says, if the city engineer determines there is available capacity. In terms of the PERC study, that had to have been done sometime between 2011 and, say, 2017. I'm not sure exactly when, but these are all drought years. And looking at Big Rock and how that's behaved and knowing a little bit about how the lower part of the Civic Center has behaved, it's really variable from one year to the next in terms of what the groundwater, what's there, how fast things move, how fast things don't move. So I would suggest that even if you were gung-ho about going ahead with this, you'd want more study over a longer period, maybe a decade, to get some better sense of what the parameters are on the availability and what the PERC is from one year to the next, and really what that looks like. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Next up is Elizabeth Stevens, followed by Don Schmitz, followed by Keegan Gibbs.
Good evening again. Thank you for taking the time to hear this. This proposal is extremely important to the city of Malibu and its growth. And I do feel that there should be probably more vetting that goes on in this process so that the residents can have a chance to speak out. I only learned about this at the last minute. And how lucky I get to have Dawn follow me, because this really is a developer's dream. And I don't have a lot of experience as far as Malibu and its slow growth, but I did vote for many of you because of slow growth. I came from an area where they were pro-developers, and my neighborhood, I have firsthand experience of how when it was sewered up, that every lot, for the most part, was developed. And it changed the whole character of our subdivision. So it was a small subdivision. We had one ingress, one egress, and it was totally impacted. And so I moved here, hoping to get sued by the MRCA on top of it. But I came here for the slow growth, and I do believe in responsible development. I don't want to deny anyone the use of their property. And it sounds to me that no one here is being denied the use of their property or being able to develop it. I think they just have to develop it within the guidelines that's being presented and following the general plan. And I thank you very much for your time and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Excuse me. Next is Don Schmitz with 4 minutes. Tibor Kellerman, are you here? Okay, thank you. Excuse me, followed by Keegan Gibbs and then Linda Gibbs.
We're patiently waiting for the PowerPoint. A pregnant pause, if you will. Hi, I'm Don Schmitz. Apparently I'm the dreaming developer, and I appreciate being in front of you today. The staff report references my client's property, which is Third Point Land Company, as being outside of the prohibition area, which I found intriguing. As you can see in the exhibit in front of you, it is right dab smack in the middle of the prohibition area, as you can see right here. It's often referred to as the Smith property. Two esteemed folks in the community testified in regards to this, and well, of course it shouldn't be developed because it's a wetland. And yes, it is a wetland, and we have hired the very best biologists to delineate that wetland. We have vetted that with the city biologist, Dave Crawford, and we vetted it with the biologist for the California Coastal Commission. And you can, in fact, consistent with the LCP, have a clean sheets project on this property that respects all the setbacks for that wetland. And utilizing infrastructure like a sewage treatment plant to prevent development is not only inappropriate, it's kind of illegal. We're supposed to apply the policies of the local coastal program and the municipal code to control development and ascertain definitively what's appropriate and what isn't. And we've got some concerns in regards to the numbers, the base numbers that were provided to you by staff. The EIR, the final EIR that was certified by the city, specified that the total build out for all three phases would be 469,000 gallons per day. Everything getting built out. And of course, there's been some development which is going to be much less. You bought some property and we went from a hotel to a graveyard, a memorial park, excuse me. But 517,000 gallons per day was the number that was utilized in the staff report for the maximum capacity. In actuality, we have about 45,000 gallons based upon the numbers in the final environmental impact report for all the development between that and the 517,000 gallons per day. Now, staff gives you a number of 69,000 and change of new applications which are before you, but let's break that down a little bit. You have 39,000 gallons. The lion's share of it is Malibu Country Estates, which is outside of the moratorium in the prohibition area entirely. If you're to take that out, you'd see that you have 21,000 gallons per day for phase 1 and 2 expansion, 5,000 gallons per day for phase 3 expansion, and then 10,854 gallons per day in phase 3, which isn't an expansion. It was always part of the calculations. So we think that you ought to take that out. So between the expansions in phase 1 and 2 and in phase 3, you're actually looking at 26,255 gallons per day, which is a much less scary number than the 69,000 gallons referenced in the report. The report also specifies that the assimilative capacity is the constraint in regards to this. But the final EIR adopted by the city said that the assimilative capacity is 711,000 gallons. That's 611,000 gallons in the injection wells and another 100,000 gallons in Winter Canyon. There is more than adequate assimilative capacity for what we are talking about here today. So with the current and future demand in our certified EIR of 469,000 gallons per day, we have an excess capacity of assimilative capacity of 241,000 gallons per day. What is before you tonight with taking out the Malibu Country Estates component, which is the giant elephant in the room and outside of the prohibition area, you're looking at a very small percentage of the assimilative capacity that what you've already certified. I understand that these are conflicting numbers with what your very capable staff has given you, but these are straight from the city approved documents. We also suggest that you continue this matter so that we're on the same page for you to do your analysis. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don. Next up is Keegan Gibbs, followed by Linda Gibbs, followed by Drew Ann Jacobson.
Evening, Council. I'll let my mom speak a little bit further on the wetlands issue for your property, Don. I'm sure that's a kind of a thorn in the side for that property. So one way to get rid of a wetland is to continue to till the property. It'll pull all the water out and eventually become dry and kill all the vegetation. And then to further kill all the vegetation, what you would want to do is build a 30,000 square foot structure right next to that wetland. That would for sure kill it, so that'd clean that up. I 100% hope that you guys vote no on this. All it does is go against our mission statement as a city and let these properties face phase 3 when phase 3 happens, if it happens. So that's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Keegan. Next is Linda Gibbs,
Hi,
followed
I
by
heard some
Drew Ann
chuckles
Jacobson.
about the tilling, and I
Oh,
just
sorry,
want to.
Linda, excuse me one second. Followed by Ryan Embry. If you can all get ready to speak. Thank you.
I just want to clarify that soil is really integral to all hydrology, that soil actually regulates hydrology. And the reason that a planet with a hotter surface responds with hydrological extremes like more intense and more frequent wildfires, hot, dry wind, and hurricanes, which are wet, cold winds, and floods, which are too much water, and droughts that are not enough water, are because hydrology is responsible for 95% of the heat dynamics of this planet. And soil regulates hydrology. So what we do to the soil is extremely important moving forward in these next 10 years, that all of, I mean, I've even heard it on with, you know, the presidential candidates referring to it. All of the climate change experts say the next 10 years will determine the next 1,000. What we need to focus on is how do we cool this planet? And the way we will do it is through hydrology. So of course, yes, I'm very concerned about the wetland in this project. And the other thing is that what people don't realize is what you do to a wetland when it is destroyed is that it affects land as it aridifies land inland 600 miles. It's not just what happens in that property. Because of this pump, this hydrological pump that moves from the coast through trees and through the water cycle inland. So all these decisions are incredibly important when we're talking about water, which is what we're talking about here tonight. And we're also talking about increasing the potential to increase development, which I'm asking you to please not give. I'm not asking you not to allow people to develop, just to, you know, ask them to, you know, just let's not increase it. And, you know, I understand people wanting to do a hotel. That sounds lovely. However, the parking is really bad, and it's only one of the last parking lots left there next to the Malibu Inn. So that's another thing. That's like a really big deal. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next is Drew Ann Jacobson, followed by Ryan Embry, followed by Lynn Conheim. If you could all get ready to come speak. Are we missing Drew? Okay, I'm not sure if Drew left. Maybe we can go out of order. Okay, Ryan Embry, followed by Lynn Conheim, and I'll keep Drew's slip here in the event she is coming back in the room.
Well, I'd like to direct you kind of as to why we're here. It was the Water Board's assumptions presented in a report from November 5th of 2009, of which there was conflicting data, and the city used the USGS, and we had Jim Thorson, and we were ready to go to bat, but something went wrong. The city did not defend the residents and the local control, and we are stuck in a memorandum of understanding. I was very disappointed to hear staff use the words mandate. Riva did it 4 times. Rob did it twice. The mandate is simply to comply with the voluntary memorandum of understanding that the city entered into on behalf of properties in the city, not for the property owners. The city happens to own properties that are discharging and can speak for those properties, which I think they're all in phase 1. That worked out great for you guys. But let me go back to the technical memo number 4, which is TM4-32 of the report from the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. And this is dated November 5th, 2009. And it lists the percentages of the assumed amount of pollution getting into Malibu Lagoon. Let's not forget why we're here. That's what it was all about. It showed the properties down on Cross Creek Road, the shopping centers, and they mostly have the same names, the Malibu Country Mart, 1, 2, and 3.
There's a Shell gas station. These are the ones that had a 95% rating of estimated percent flow to Malibu Lagoon, and it lists the nitrogen levels and loads. And there's assumption that they agreed, it was an assumption in the report. In fact, the word assumption, if you search on it in their own memo number 4, which there were 5 memos, they used assumption, I think it was 21 times, assumes twice. There was based on a lot of assumptions that really are not good science, as we well know. But the condominiums in Winter Canyon were listed as an estimated percent possible flow to the lagoon of 1%. Well, all the properties that are in phase 1 should be in phase 1 because they are in the 95% category, or the best case was 60%, which happens to be, I think, the city's owned lumberyard. Animal Hospital was 95%. So anybody who's petitioning to go into a sewage treatment plant should not be permitted in for economic benefit and convenience. The practical impact of reducing pollution to the lagoon is the purpose. And let's not forget what that is, the nitrogen load. You also have to look at the homeless who are living under the Malibu Lagoon Bridge now and are ruining the potential measurements for this phase 2, phase 3 trigger.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
Okay, next is Lynn Conheim. And if Drew doesn't come back, I will assume she's decided to leave. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Conheim. I have a property at 24157 Malibu Road. I'm in plan check right now, and my whole point, what I'm trying to say is that environmentally, I would think it would be better if I don't put my septic system in, which I will be doing, but if I could tie into this, I'm basically asking you to consider prioritizing all this and not just say no to the whole project of what's in front of you. But there are people like myself that could fall into this and make it a lot better environmental situation. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. All right, council, who'd like to go first?
I'll go. Clarifying question from City Manager, Hughes Research Lab and its participation phase 2 was talked about. Could you give us a little background on that, please?
Of course. So Hughes Research Laboratory was originally in phase 3, and they requested to participate in phase 2, which the council considered and approved. The benefit of having Hughes Research Laboratory in phase 2 is that they have a tremendous capacity to take the recycled water, regardless of whether there's a wet weather event. Just to back up briefly for the council, the capacity of the treatment facility is based on the capacity of the injection wells. It's not on the amount of water that can come through the facility every day. It's what do you do with that clean water if there is a wet weather event and you can't irrigate it with it. And so primarily we'd like to send all the clean water back to the properties to irrigate with, but obviously you can't do that if it is raining and there's limited capacity for storage on the facility site. Hughes Research Laboratory, because of the nature of their business, has a lot of cooling towers and air conditioning systems. And so regardless of the weather, they can take a great deal of water every day, more than what they send to the facility. So that was one of the considerations that was taken in when Hughes Research Laboratory was approved to participate in phase 2. Their property was also called out in the MOU with the regional board as having the flexibility to move into a different phase. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, let's contextualize this whole thing. Let's turn the Wayback Machine to cityhood. I had a Fight Sewers bumper sticker, like a lot of people did. So that is a backdrop of, it is the backdrop of cityhood. And it's an emotional issue. And this particular facility which I would like to commend the Public Works Director for getting an award for excellent execution of a complex design and bringing it in under schedule. Wasn't something that I think anybody, well, maybe some people, but very few people in Malibu actually wanted this thing, and people fought tooth and nail against it, but it was sort of imposed on us. But it's complicated. I mean, they were ripping up the streets left and right, and I've gotten a tour of the facility, and it's complicated in planning and complicated in the finances that go into it and the distribution, and like you just said, doing all the water. And so far, so good, right? Everything's working out. So it's a complicated issue. It has a emotional component, which is coupled with development and the concern that this could be used as a tool to corrode the mission statement. And a number of people have mentioned that, and I think that's appropriate to mention that. And it is. It's not just an aspirational thing. It's actually the prime directive. So we have to consider that. And I appreciate everyone who is here advocating for their clients as professionals or for their individual properties for the noble goal of environmental concerns for your property and for getting sort of state-of-the-art stuff done now rather than, I have to do a septic system, then maybe later I'll have to move into phase 3. And I get all that. But absent in the discussion is, I would say, a compelling overriding need to deviate from the plan, the original plan. So me personally, when I look at a complicated plan that a peewee little town like us is wrestled into submission successfully so far, but it still has a long way to go. The only reason to really stray from the plan, and you just gave us one example of it, is something that enhances the capability of the system, or if there's some overriding compelling benefit to the town overall, I would say, if I'm properly characterizing that. And I haven't heard that from any of the properties here. Although I understand that their need, I just haven't heard that there's a compelling need. And you did talk about the numbers of the system, and to me, that 10,000 gallons, that's Murphy factor. To me, I like to plan for a little fudge factor and to say, yeah, well, we got 10,000 more, and so let's go up to 9.5 and stick it in there. I kind of like a little buffer myself. So that's my general feeling on this. As I listen to all these people be honest and forthright about advocating for their properties, etc., that's how I feel about it. Is I don't see in any of these properties a compelling need to deviate from this complicated system that we've set up, and have done a very good job on, by the way, Rob. Very good job. So I want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you, Rick. Who'd like to go next?
All right. First of all, I want to thank Linda. Are you here, Linda? Oh, there you are. My eyesight ends a little before that. I've learned so much from you on so many things involving the environment and the soil in particular, and small water cycles and everything else. And I just really appreciate that all you've taught me, and I hope you can continue that education because I find it fascinating and important, and I just wanted to point that out in public here. And I want to tag on basically with Rick says. I agree with everything he said, and I just want to go a little further. I think it's pretty clear that there's no desire to expand capacity in this town. I think that's been clear for decades. I understand particularly the homeowners, why they would want to connect to it, but at the same time, I don't think expanding capacity is what we should be doing right now. I think staff clearly pointed out there's issues with that, even if we wanted to. I don't know why we'd go down that road. I don't think there's any appetite for it in any sense at all. And further than that, I didn't run for city council in any way, shape, or form to increase development in the Civic Center area. I adamantly voted against the Whole Foods project, and as Craig can testify, since he wrote most of my campaign materials and my website, that's just not my goal at all. With that said, the irony here to me in some of this is that all those properties kind of knew where they were coming into this. So while I understand the desire that they would have to tap in, I don't see it as the right way for Malibu to go at this point. I'm going to add one caveat that Rick kind of touched on. If we were to add capacity at all, the only thing I would consider in the tiniest way is if it was for the Malibu properties that we own because the citizens of Malibu wanted something, like a bathroom by the skate park. There's an idea. Okay. I don't know. Maybe the town wants to do something on Aoki and needs bathrooms there. I don't know exactly what it would be, but I would certainly say we save that for our uses as town, as a city, not for other interests. So that's where I stand. And it was said well by a couple people. If we were to go forward, we have a ton of study to do on this. I don't see any appetite to do so, and my vote will be no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. Skylar?
Mikey, I would add, I think that the city has sufficient capacity on the properties that it's purchased, because those were slated not to
But
be
I'm
parks.
considering the fudge factor, which you enjoyed.
Rick pointed out the fudge
immensely.
factor of the
Yes.
fudge factory. I did duly note that. It's nothing wrong with a little redundancy built into the fudge factory to make sure we don't have any fudgy problems down stream there. I think that what has been said in my understanding of our community reflects the reason for why I got elected the first time and a second time into office, strictly in regards to development and how something like this can be seen as an increase in development or an increase in usage of existing sites. I'm surprised that there was not a lot more homeowners that wanted to do this, but I don't know how it was really put out there to them. I think that was sort of something when you hear about Mr. Conheim down on Malibu Road and others, like here you have a project going through the things and he's going to wind up paying to put in a septic system, and if phase 3 happens, I forget if you're in the prohibition area or not, but it's maybe more hypothetical than they would be scrapping that system and hooking up to the Civic Center wastewater treatment facility. So I think that's why some of the properties and whatnot obviously have been put on hold, and I think that's that's understood in the community. I would make a motion for discussion that just really gives, I think, the direction to staff. To me, is to move forward with the phases as they are. And the reason for that, one, is time. Two, is complying with the MOU with the regional board. I have concerns over changing the engineering. I don't know if there's any CEQA impacts if that stuff gets changed, including a property that's not located in any phases. That our timetable starts to get very extended, where then taking a lot of staff time to deal with this, going back to the regional board, asking for forgiveness, asking, for, hey, we're making it more complicated, give us more time. I think the capacity issue, if at some point in the future, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or not phase 3 are established, and you have a capacity thing, and it's some future council has to make a decision based on a capacity, then that can be made at the time when that stuff's already built out. But
so the motion is to not allow additional properties to connect to the wastewater facility at this time?
yeah, and to proceed with phase 2 as it stands. It's pretty simple.
I'll second that.
We'll both second.
I was going to say you beat me to it.
I don't know if that simplifies it or if there's anything else that staff's looking for in terms of direction, but I would say get going on it and get it done.
May I make a couple comments here? Okay.
You're the mayor.
Thank you. Not yet.
Ish.
I agree with my fellow council members, and I also recommend that we not commit the maximum, that other 10,000 gallons per day. We don't need to max it out. We don't know about future projects, and I would gladly second Skylar's motion to disallow any expansion of Phase 2 and stay with the existing mandated boundaries. Unless I misstated your motion.
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I would just add, I think that it's probably frustrating for some of the property owners and commercial property owners that they don't see the flexibility on this the way that it stands. But some of the people in regards to the capacity, I think that they should have asked for that capacity. They might have not been the owner at the time, but when those things were getting decided a long time ago.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we take a vote?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you vote?
Oh, I did vote. But yeah, I wanted to clarify something too. There was a lot of stuff going on social media about this. This was not an item for me or Mikey, just to be very clear about that. It's not something I like.
That's called 7A. It's coming up.
Thought at night that we should do this. I did not come up with that idea, so just want to be very clear about that. I know that.
Okay,
Sorry, I got blamed for something that I wasn't supporting.
not this time. Okay, the motion carries. We're moving on to item 6B. Do we have a staff report, please?
Do you want Jefferson to come back?
Excuse me.
If he's awake.
Can somebody locate Jefferson, our mayor, and ask him to come back? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate the council covering for me. Okay, we're at 6B, and that's Zuma Beach FM Emergency and Communication Broadcasting. Okay, Hans. Okay, 6B. I guess we'll hear from Jesse first.
Good evening, Mayor Wagner, members of City Council. The item before you tonight is the utilization of Malibu Bluffs Park as the location for an FM booster station for KBOO FM and Hans, who I know everybody's familiar with. The antenna would extend KBOO's listenable signal east to Big Rock and west to Latigo Canyon and would allow them to cover 97% of the city once completed. So real quick, I have a one-slide presentation here just showing the location of where the antenna would be installed. It's the Parks Maintenance Building, which is located at the end of Winter Mesa Drive next to Bluffs Park. So we worked with Hans with his proposal to talk about what the project would include, which is a 28-foot mast, which would have two identical antennas to the right and left of the antenna at the top. It would have 2 to 3 small solar connectors, which would help the antenna remain powered during potential issues such as public safety power shutoff, PSPS. It would have a 19-watt transmitter inside the park maintenance building and then would include a small communications dish, which is 3 feet in diameter, which we would place at a low level and out of view of the public. So city staff reviewed the project with Mr. Letts, and we do believe it would require, we don't believe, we know it will require a conditional development permit. And then we worked with Hans on the height, and I know that we've talked with him and he's willing to reduce the height depending on the issues that could arise from that. So if it were close to that 28-foot height, would potentially require a planning variance and a site plan review. So with that, before moving forward with the permit, because this is a private antenna on public property, we are asking the council for approval of using that location at Bluffs Park, and we would put together a license agreement with Hans that would detail some of the items such as maintenance, the specific equipment, and the specific location for the project. So I know that Hans is here to answer any further questions you might have, and I'm happy to do the same.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. We have an additional public speaker, Scott Talal. Scott went home. Okay. We're down to another public speaker. Oh, thank you. Well, Norm or Hans, who would like to go first? Because you're okay. Hans, you're up.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you this evening. Usually I'm watching you at home, taping you for the news. In designing this, the FCC says, just put in a 40-foot tower, it'll solve your problems. No, can't do that. So we asked for a 28-foot tower, and then we talked and we considered what we're doing, and this is such a unique, beautiful place. We really, really don't want to put in a 28-foot tower. So we did ask for that. A 28-foot tower would get the signal over the hill to Pacific Coast Highway, going up the hill at the cemetery site in that groove there. An 18-foot probably won't. We'll probably lose the highway right there, but that's okay. You know, we can deal with that. People can listen to rap for a few minutes. So the way we want to build this is to make it look almost about a foot or two higher than the top of the maintenance shed itself. So that if you're standing at the backstops or parking your car there, you'll look over and you'll see the building with a small horizon going back and forth. The mast would come up and then the antenna would spread out from that. Then, of course, when you're talking about radios, you're talking about transmission, you're talking about radiation, you're talking about power coming out of the antenna. People get sensitive about that. We understand that. I want to emphasize that our transmitter at 19 watts, we could be much more powerful. We powered it down so that we don't cause a public health concern of any sort. My engineer just sent me this, that the federal standard is 200 microwatts per square meter, per square centimeter, 200 microwatts per square centimeter. We're going to put out 1.4 microvolt per square meter. Not an engineer. So we are at about 0.5% of the federal exposure. And if you've ever had a microwave oven interfere with your FM radio or your TV set or something, that's in the thousands of microvolts. We're going to be way, 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 way below that. The Western booster that we're going to put at Trancas, we're actually going to lay on my roof at my house. It's just going to sit there, and it's going to plug into the wall, and that's directly above my bedroom. And I'm not in the slightest bit worried about it.
Will it make you grow more hair?
God, I hope so. In the right place. So I'm here if you have a question. Thank you very much.
You're up, Norm, and after Norm is Ryan Embry.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this issue. I'm strongly in favor of it. You know, if we can have Santa Monica College with a height limit of 35 feet, we can have a tower with a height limit of 35 feet. This is a matter of communication. And we started out this evening talking about how important communication actually is, especially in times of emergency. This is an antenna and a method for communicating that Malibu does not have right now and has an opportunity to have. The higher the antenna, the less radiation and the less hair that will grow on Hans Lett's head. So, and you know, anyway, I'm strongly in favor. I think it's very, very important. I think it's important to Malibu and its efforts to communicate with its people during emergencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm. And Ryan, you're up.
I haven't really heard exactly how high it's going to be, but I do know that we've used Bluffs Park, and it is the designated evacuation facility for the city hall operations in case this building were to become destroyed or something. So the fields have been used as helipads. So would this antenna be a problem for that? I haven't heard. I know that Hans is very conscientious about emergency preparedness. We certainly wouldn't want to have something there with a flashing red light on top or anything that would interfere with emergency operations for Bluffs Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. We're up to council. Skylar, you'd like to start?
Mayor Wagner, just to address Ryan's concern, it looks like based on the location of where this antenna would be going, it would be not in an area where a helicopter would ever be landing. I would like to make a motion to authorize this with it not to exceed. I saw 28 feet in here, but then I think I saw 22 feet. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, come on up, Hans. Thanks.
We'd like to go 2 feet above the building height, and I'm not sure exactly.
I reckon that building's only about 18 feet.
I think so.
Tall. I don't think it's taller than 18
Well,
feet.
I believe
Jesse?
I believe Jesse said if we go above 18 feet, we need a site review. So
You do?
We want to go below that.
Jesse, is the idea here that the council's approving the licensing agreement, then it goes through the permitting process, and then a final version of the license agreement will come back to the council for approval afterwards?
I would defer to your good judgment on the exact process of that, but what I will say is that you're not approving the installation of the antenna. You're just saying that Bluffs Park is the location that we would work to get the proper planning approvals for to install it there.
Perfection.
So it's just about the location tonight.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And there would be no light. We'd be about 1 foot above the building. So.
Yeah, can I make a comment about that? I appreciate your concern for the aesthetics and the height requirements, et cetera, and trying to make it smooth through the planning process. But I see this as a simple, reliable source of emergency information in a catastrophic situation. And we've recently been through something where we've seen all the normal things that we rely on not be reliable. So I would encourage you to put it at the height that's necessary to get the appropriate coverage that would be appropriate in an emergency, okay? And if you want to start at the 18-foot or whatever and see how that works, great. But if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to come back here, because I suspect that you're probably going to be warmly received if you say, I need 5 more feet and I can get through the canyons, et cetera, or whatever it is. You're the expert, you know, but don't be shy about that. This is the S word attached to it, the safety word. And if there's one message that came loud and clear out of the Woolsey fire is, we need to be more ready next time. This is a key component for the city. And I appreciate all the effort that you've done to make this happen.
I would totally echo that too. He took the same words. This is important, and I really appreciate that you're doing this. I'm a big supporter. Let's do it right. Let's not have gaps. I'll defer to the science to you and all that, but I agree with what Rick said.
We would have a better signal at 28, but we'll try it at 18. And there's really, given the vagaries of the mountains and the outside radio stations, we don't know how this is going to work. And I think let's try it. If it doesn't work, we'll come back.
I'll defer to you. Let's just make it the best it can be.
Thank you.
Quickly, Hans, while you're up there, I didn't understand some of the data. I did receive a couple of emails and phone calls about irradiation, and I appreciate you addressing it. But right next to the ball field there, you don't feel that there's any issues with that high watt or high intensity radiation coming out toward the ball playing kids in the skate park?
That light right there puts out more radiation than we're going to put out.
That's the kind of comparison that a layman can understand. If you tell me a light bulb puts out more, I feel confident in you're pushing that forward.
I understand people's concerns about it, and we wouldn't do this if we thought it was putting anybody in anybody's harm way.
That's why he's putting one on his roof. above his bed.
I am actually putting one pointing directly at my bed,
Okay.
10 feet above it.
All right,
Do we have a
am I
motion?
clear on what the motion is?
If the council's inclined, I would suggest authorizing the city staff to negotiate a licensing agreement up to 28 feet with the final form to come back to city council on consent after the project has been permitted, if that,
Yes.
to give
that.
flexibility to the project.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Hans.
Hans. Okay, 7A, Declaration of Climate Emergency. Council members Peak and Pearson, the 2P brothers. So, who would like to take this? Oh,
I'll just
yeah, we
briefly start out by saying that I think it kind of speaks for itself, and that we do have a climate emergency on our hands worldwide. And I think that it's a positive thing for us to make that declaration here, and there will be more positive things to come.
And I would tag on to say, first of all, I went to bring this forward and discovered that Skylar already had, and so I want to thank him for doing so and letting me tag on. I think this is vitally important. This makes a signal we want to join 950 other cities around the world in setting a direction for the future on our environmental stewardship and responsibility in many ways, including being carbon neutral, but that's just the start. And there's a lot of other things to look at here. If you saw Craig's manifesto, it touched on many areas this could go into.
Okay, before we get too deep into it, we should have the public speakers.
Right. So I just wanted to, that's just part of the report, and talk about it more in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. First speaker, Craig Hill, and you have an extra minute from Chris Frost. All right, so you're fortified with 4 minutes, speaker. Yes, I indicated that, Chris. Thank you. That's why he's got 4 minutes.
Okay, I took this seriously. I only wrote 2 pages, so, I mean, in 2 hours. Okay. To be a global leader, as your resolution proposes, will require dramatic action. You'll have to come up with carrots and sticks, incentives or regulations dramatic enough to inspire and influence others in the world. Such drama implies our own lifestyles will have to change, some more than others. Be mindful about calling it an emergency. That connotes hasty action in a short period, whereas the climate problem calls for more permanent societal remodeling. That suggests a deliberate process. So, as discussed in my letter, you'll want to create a body charged with doing research and making recommendations to council. It should have a diverse composition, including expertise from UCLA, maybe NRDC, community members, agencies such as Caltrans, etc. Its mandate should be adaptive. Its work plan adjustable as it learns and as real-world conditions change. It should meet periodically to update different aspects of the climate problem. It's a big, complex thing. You're not going to solve it all in a couple meetings. So you've just had an item on a disaster council. If its mandate is to respond to acute problems, this climate commission would address chronic long-term issues. It might even be the future commission that I've wanted to see that would look at long-range issues more generally, like PCH traffic. So there's a question about the scope of the mandate, but we'll call it the Climate Commission for now. Your resolution calls for converting to a carbon-neutral economy. Sectors where this city has the greatest greenhouse impact are in transportation. Vehicle emissions are the biggest category. Electricity, mostly residential. Housing, and food consumption. I made some suggestions in each of those categories. Here are a few tonight. Partner with the state to incentivize electric cars. There might be a way to configure reversible rush hour lanes on some parts of PCH where electric vehicles would get priority. Call it the platinum lane, or whatever the 21st century version of Diamond Lane. In the housing area, the city should be incentivizing use of sustainable building materials designed cradle to grave, involving zero fossil fuels. In food production, a recent IPC report finds that roughly 20% of global climate change is attributable to eating meat due to its disproportionate impacts on land use. Per calorie, beef has 73 times as much climate impact as does soy. So you should be disincentivizing meat if you're serious, or getting people to eat less at least. But anyway, these are all things that the future commission could address. You can implement 3 measures right away. One is rooftop solar is good, but now that the CPA can generate from 100% renewable sources, that provides economy of scale better than can be achieved by putting solar on every house. In any case, the city should switch its default CPA plan to 100% renewable. Most everyone here can afford the marginal cost increase. For those who can't, Edison has low income rates, and achieving high compliance with the 100% default would be something to crow about. In building to accommodate sea level rise, you mentioned this, that you're already talking about it. The standard has to be higher. I went into some details about how and why, and there's already state guidance on that. So we can be mandating a higher number than the 18 inches, and 3 or 4 feet is in the medium risk zone as the state defines it. And then finally, is the city's portfolio clean and green? If not, it should be divesting from fossil fuels and maybe addressing social justice issues while you're at it. There are a number of progressive funds, many doing well given the rise in renewable investment. So 4 things: form a future commission, implement the 100% default on CPA, sea level rise numbers, and check on the city's portfolio. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. I look forward to that portfolio statement. Lance, you're up, and then Lance is followed by Keegan.
Council members, I really appreciate the private audience that I've got with you here this evening. But this is one of the most, if not the most important thing that we can do for our children and our grandchildren. This is all about future generations. 25 years ago, well, 26 years ago, 1993, I was tasked by the Clinton administration to set up the first federal Office of Sustainable Development in the U.S. federal government. And we did it in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And during the course of these last 26 years or so, I've dedicated my entire existence to not only my children, but all of our children. And that is, what is it that we can leave them that will benefit them, because we've left them a mess. And one of the things which we need to accept, unfortunately, which we didn't need to accept when I first started in this business, we are beyond mitigation. It's all about adaptation at this point. The mitigation is gone. We are going to have to learn how to adapt to what we have created. And I gave a speech. I've given over 100 talks, being one of Al Gore's first climate change messengers worldwide. And I gave a speech at the University of Pennsylvania once, and this very esteemed geologist who was head of the Earth and Environmental Science Department at Penn said to me, "You've got it all wrong." And I said, "How could that be?" He said, "Al Gore has outlined it for us in his book, in his movie, in the presentations, the slide presentations that we're doing around the world." And he said, "You keep on talking about how the survival of the planet is at stake." He said, "That's not true." He said, "The planet will survive." And I said, "What about the people?" He said, "That's a very different question." And we, upon that, reorganized our entire presentation around this is about survival of the species, not survival on the planet. So I want to offer one thing. First of all, I want to offer whatever I can as far as my experience is concerned on this. But one thing that I think is really important, we developed around the country sustainable commissions in advanced thinking communities like Seattle and Portland. And we created a sustainability index in each of these communities in which members of the community participated in identifying what quantitative measurements were important to the community in which they live. And of course, it's always clean air, and it's clean water, and it's bicycle lanes, and it's the ability to fish. And it's all the things that people think, the economic indicators, the environmental indicators. Do that here. Form a commission here where you have people from the community deciding on quantitative measurements, because on the quantitative measurements, you can measure whether you're succeeding or not.
Thank you, Lance. Thanks for wrapping it up there. Keegan, thank you. Your last speaker.
Good evening, Council. I'm in 100% support of this. Thank you guys for bringing this up. The only comment I really have is this is an extremely serious issue, and I hope that it doesn't become just a gesture. I hope that it really is something that the city takes seriously. And we joke about straws or sandbags, but there's more things that affect the environment, especially negatively, than we think. And I hope that a good commission gets formed, or a commission is formed, and I hope that you guys appoint good people onto that commission. So I appreciate you guys bringing this forward, and obviously I would say vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Keegan. And now we're up to council.
So I would like to add that in my mind, this is a step towards how our environmental commission, or whatever we call it, what its goal is, how it runs. So I'm with the speakers that mentioned that very much, and very pleased to see a majority of my commissioners here participating. I do appreciate that kind of support, absolutely 100%. So yeah, this is a long range. This is to set long range planning. And of course that starts right away. So thank you to the speakers. I think you kind of echo many of my thoughts and beyond. We need to head in this direction, and we need to do more. We need to team up with other areas, other cities, other regions. We need to be advocates. We need to do all the bits and pieces in our town and in our global village. So that's what was on my mind. I appreciate a number of people who helped me with this, including Margaret at Climate Action in New York City. Spoke with her. She was very helpful. So supplied a lot of information, which was great on what the global goal is, which it starts in our local community. And actually the one thing I was able to add to their mandate, which is international, was the impact, especially in the western states and other places in the world, that climate change has on wildfire. So she appreciated that in return. So this is a global effort, and I appreciate Skylar bringing it forward, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mikey. Anybody else?
Yeah, can you walk me through the lineage of how this, how you got the idea to bring this about?
It came up at a previous council meeting, and a couple different individuals from the public had encouraged our community to join it. So I brought it forward, and Mikey also separately tried to bring it forward, and then realized it was always already coming forward. And so that's where it came from.
Right, for
So
me,
It actually came from like hundreds of years of humans like wrecking stuff. That's really where it came from. But now we're at a place to address it. So.
For me, it's a little different. This is something on my mind back before I ran for city council, and understanding and learning about what other global communities were doing was a big part of that process for me going forward. So to me, what's been great, there's been a number of people along the way, like Margaret at Climate Action, that really gave it additional context, which was super important. So to me, this maybe kind of started to gel when Craig helped me put together my platform, and we were looking for the language to express what we felt needed to happen. And I don't know that we came up with this exact words, but we were dancing around it all over the place in different and more detail. And to find a larger context, which people like Linda were a part of, Lance, Keegan, Craig, it's just been kind of it's been a growing thing. And then getting the real context that there's a global movement we can be a part of was really helpful to me.
And I would also just add, I think that we at the city do set a pretty good example, and we can improve that example with how we address things that we do and operate within the city that affect climate change.
And last thing, September 23rd, which is our next city council meeting, is actually the UN's climate showcase on that day. So my thought was to time it with that. Then I discovered that Skylar had brought it forward here, so change to that. But this is the month, end of September and October is climate on the worldwide stage, of which the U.S. has got a spotty place in right now. So I think we need to make a stand here and join the rest of the world on our level and move forward.
Well, can I go to Paris to sign the accords?
I'll buy the ticket.
No, yeah, you got it, it's on tape.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you're joining a global movement as opposed to it's an idea that came from you, right?
I did not invent the thought of climate change, no.
No, I'm talking about the expression climate emergency.
It's what's been out there for a while, and getting the context from other people is really helpful. Absolutely. So there's resources and other voices out there and scientists, and so there's a lot of people joined in, you're right, to help. This is a global issue.
If I may, Lance, thank you. Yeah, this is no longer about mitigation. It's about adaptation. That's clear. And I just want to reiterate here that the resolution is not just about endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency. It's about requesting regional collaboration. So that's where I think we need to really focus. I mean, it's great to talk about this among ourselves, and we can each do, I'm sure, better than what we're doing right now. I happen to live with a very crabby environmental studies major, so I hear about this all the time, and I learn a lot of things from her every day, and I wish she were here tonight. I'm sure she'd love to talk. But I think we do need to look for regional collaboration right here within our own COG, countywide, statewide, and on the global stage. So I really thank both of you, Skylar and Mikey, for making sure this got on the agenda. And unless anybody else has anything to say.
Yeah, I got something else.
Okay, I'll stop talking here.
So, we talked about I just wanted to throw this out there. We were talking about the Conservancy, and when Barbara Streisand donated her property, she donated it to them with the understanding that it would become the Streisand Center for Environmental, Studies, and that it would be a benign, beautiful, natural environment where people would come from all over the world to discuss environmental issues, So it's kind of ironic because as soon as they took it over, they were like, we're not doing that. We're moving our offices in there, and it's kind of tragic, I think, in a way that the Conservancy, we had a great opportunity to take the lead on some of this, passed on that opportunity.
We don't want this to end that way.
I'm not, I think, there's a lot of doomsday sort of predictions on the environment that's been going on since I was a kid. And I think lost in a lot of that is the good things that have happened, You said we've messed it up for our kids. And I think in many ways we have to remember that we've done a lot of good things. There's a lot more gray whales out there now. The water's a lot cleaner. The brown pelicans are back. The smog is gone. I mean, the smog was worse in the 50s than it is now. We've got, more than twice as many people here. So there are good things that are happening. It's not the whole emergency thing. There's a lot of doomsdayism that goes on all the time. In other words, world was coming to an end because of overpopulation in the 60s. It was going to be an ice age. It was going to be this. It was going to be that. And I think sometimes we freak out our kids a little too much. I think that our city does a great job already, and I want to commend you, Skylar, for taking lead on some of these things that have given the city worldwide recognition for setting the example. Things like the straw thing and the plastic bags or the sandbags, et cetera. So I think that for me, it's better to take action and set an example rather than to say, there's an emergency, you know. And I think that it's not an emergency. It's just like Craig said. It's a deliberative process. It's kind of like a way of life. It's like we're not going on a diet. We're going to live a certain way. And I think we do a good job of that. And so I take a little bit of issue with the emergency expression because I think we're doing a good job and we're living it and we're setting the example. And that's my commentary on this. And I know there's a global movement to declare an emergency and the world's coming to an end. But they've been saying that for the last 40 years and it hasn't come to an end yet. But I support all of your endeavors and I probably won't vote to declare a climate emergency, although to all my environmentally conscious friends out there, I think we do a great job in the city, whether it be looking out for the monarch butterflies or going all solar around the city and our solar vehicles and our wastewater treatment facility. I think it's a way of life, and I think we're doing it already without the drama of declaring an emergency. But I respect all of your passion on the subject, and it's not that I don't support your efforts, it's just it's not an emergency, it's a way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any other comments from council? Can we get a motion then?
I would just add that, and Reva, maybe you can make a note of this, if we can bring back an item that deals with our default for our CPA separately. I think there would be consensus to do that now. Before that time period is to do that. I know that the city, for our buildings, we went to go 100% renewable for how our power is supplied and where it's coming from, but we want that for more people.
Well,
and my motion was going to be
comment real quickly too.
Oh.
I appreciate Rick's position. And for me, I've always talked about overpopulation, and I think that's truly where we're going to have to determine our futures for our children. But on a lighter scope, I appreciate the efforts of Mikey and Skylar for bringing this forward. I read about it. I just didn't get on it as quickly as you guys did, and I do appreciate that. As far as a climate commission, something like that, I think we could explore that. Certainly, as Karen had mentioned, our COG should be active in this way and find a resource between the 5 cities, because combined with the 5 cities, we have over 100,000 population, and that's a strong enough message to move forward with. So I probably won't be on council at that time, but I wish you luck in the future with this. And I will definitely support it if you two will be here next year and the year after, and hopefully you can get something through the COG. So do we have a motion?
Making a motion to adopt resolution 19-42.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? No. Okay. Okay. That's it for this evening. Did we have anybody to adjourn the meeting in memory of? Because I wasn't here for the start of the meeting.
I'd like to adjourn in memory of Dick Schreiber.
Very well then.
I was going to say that.
Very well. At 10:05, we will adjourn this city council meeting, City of Malibu, in remembrance of Dick Schreiber. Thank you very much for coming out, everybody. Have a good evening, Doctor.